Okay, Putta, we'll start. Again, good afternoon to everyone. We'll start with the method of data collection. The data collection method. Am I audible to you all? Can you all hear me? Okay. I hope you all can hear me. Good. Thank you very much for the. So we are going to discuss about the method of data collection or data collection methods, right? So these are the intended learning objectives. You can go through the learning objectives and the learning outcomes. What we are going to discuss, what do you mean by the quantitative and qualitative research and the primary and secondary data? So you all know those things. And then preparing the research instrument, that means how you can prepare the questionnaire, what type of questionnaires you can prepare, and interviews. If we are going with the interviews, what are the interview guidelines and etc. And then the data collection procedure, validity and reliability of the questionnaire, and then qualitative data collection method, validity of the quantitative data collection methods. Right. So where we are now, we have already identified, we are in the discussion, we are in the chapter number 3, right? Chapter number 3, what is chapter number 3? Methodology, right? Methodology. What we are going to identify in the methodology chapter, how you can operationalize your research. How the method, or is the way how you can collect your data. What is your unit of analysis, right? So what is your data collection method? What kind of data you are going to collect, right? So what kind of population you are going to access? So then based on the population, what is your sample? What is your sampling technique? All these things we have discussed. Right, all these things we have discussed. The data collection method, the sampling method, the population sample, unit of analysis, we identified those things. Now we have the idea what kind of data we are going to collect, and so what may be the strategy. Now we are going to collect the data, right? The collection of data collection method will be discussed according to the today's lesson. Right. The first part, you need to differentiate the quantitative and qualitative research. Right? What do you mean by the quantitative research? Any idea? Quantitative research, it's always numerical. You all are normally going to do a research in the quantitative research method. What is the basic idea regarding the quantitative research method? So we have the number, we have to use the numbers, numericals. Right, numericals, we need to analyze it and in the mathematical way and using the statistical tool, and then we are going to interpret the results. Statistical results will be discussed, or it will be implemented after the statistical methods, after we run the statistical methods. Quantitative research. Qualitative research, no any that kind of analysis, that much of analysis, but we are collecting the data. When we are collecting the data, what kind of data we are going to collect? We are going to collect the opinions. We are going to collect the perception of the individuals, right? And then we are going to have some sort of analysis, not that much regarding the quantitative analysis, and we are going to interpret it. So therefore, quantitative research is any which does not involve numbers and numerical data. In the qualitative research, we are not dealing with the data. We are not dealing with the numerical data. That means numbers, right? So most probably is involve the word or languages, but may also use the pictures or photograph and observations. Most probably we are taking the wheels, beliefs and etc. to describe these identity to describe the one individual perception or individual characteristics and otherwise. The main difference is in the quantitative research, we have the numerical data, we have an analysis, a thorough analysis, that means mathematically and statistical model, highly used in the quantitative research. In the qualitative research, what we are not going to collect the numerical data. We are just collecting or observing the perception, individuals' belief, values, and etc., and come to the conclusion. So therefore, not that much of analysis involved in the qualitative research with compared to the quantitative research analysis. Especially we are not using the mathematical and statistical techniques to analyze the data that we have collected throughout this qualitative research. Never mathematical technique and statistical methods we are not taking to the qualitative research. Quantitative versus qualitative we identified. Then the primary and the secondary data. Primary and secondary data, you know it. Ne? Primary data, what do you mean by a primary data? Yes, the researcher gathered the first hand for a specific purpose of the study. And we all have the purpose for our research, or we are calling it as objectives, right? So if the researcher gathers this data at the first hand, we are calling it as a primary data. Right? We have 4 primary data collection methods: interviews, observations, questionnaires, and the experiments. Right? Interviews, you can collect the data through primary data through the interviews, and then you can collect the primary data through the observations. You can just collect the data through the primary data through the questionnaires, and then experiment also. You can use the experiment to collect the primary data. That means without, it doesn't publish in anywhere, the primary data. You are the first owner of this data. You are the researcher, the first gather this data, right? We are calling it as a primary data. What are the examples for primary data? Primary data examples. Primary data examples. What are the examples? If you collect the observation data, if you collect the data through the interview, so those are the primary data. You ask your respondent to fill your questionnaire and take the primary data. You are the first person you gather this data. So we are calling it as a primary data. Secondary data. What do you mean by the secondary data? Second time. The data gathered through the existing sources. It has been published in somewhere else. Now from the published sources, you are going to extract this data. We are calling it as a secondary data. Right? So that means that these data have been collected by others for another purpose than the purpose of the current study. We have another purpose. We need to find the relationship between A and B. It has been the data regarding A and B collected by some researcher. The person Y already collected the data regarding A and B. So then from that source we can refer it, or if not, you can use the annual report. The most probably good example is the annual report. Right? If you want to collect, if you are going to identify the relationship between A and B, you can refer the annual report. You can refer the central bank report. You can refer the statistical websites. You can refer the statistical website, Census and Statistic Department. So they are publishing some of the secondary data. You can refer to the annual report of the companies. Listed companies annual report, PLC's annual report can be downloaded through the CSA platform. So then if we are gathering from the data from that published sources, we are calling it as a secondary data. Primary data and the secondary data. Right. Today we have quantitative data and the qualitative data collection method. Right. So quantitative data in the sense we can use the, yes, quantitative data collection method. What are the quantitative data collection method? Yes. What are the quantitative data collection method? Interviews, questionnaires, observation, case studies. So those are the qualitative data collection method, right? The thing is, student can conduct quantitative study or else qualitative study, right? If you are doing a qualitative study, definitely you have to use the primary data, right? Thank you. If we are doing the qualitative study, you need to definitely refer to the primary data. Qualitative studies, primary data. Right? But if you are doing a quantitative study, you can use either primary data as well as the other one secondary data. It's like this. You have the chance to do a qualitative research. Right? If it is a qualitative research, definitely you can refer the primary data. Primary data. So then if it is a quantitative research, you have two options. Ne? You can collect either primary data or else you can collect the secondary data. You need to identify whether I'm going with the based on my research topic, based on my variables, based on my dimensions, and based on the measurements, can I go to the primary data? Or is this a proper method is collecting the secondary data? The best way to collect my research data is the secondary data. You need to refer it and come up with the solution for your data collection method. We can't determine the supervisor or else external parties, they can't determine your data collection method. What kind of a data you are going to use can't be determined by the outside parties. You have to read. You have to refer the literature review. You have to read the similar papers and then identify. So what is the best data type suit for my research, whether it is primary, whether it is secondary. Right? Anyway, the overall idea, if you are doing a qualitative study, definitely you have to identify, you need to collect the primary data. But if you are dealing with the quantitative study, you have chance to go with the either primary or secondary data. That is based on your objectives, questions, and the research problem. You have to identify that one. Right. Now we'll identify the data collection methods. Data collection methods. So you all are know these things. These are very familiar to you. The first method is interviews. Interviews. What do you mean by an interview? Okay. What do you mean by an interview? You all are third year, first semester students. Some of the students are full-time. Yes. Some of the students, they are having the weekend batch, neither. So they already employed. But some of the students, so they just go to the industry. Anyway, you all have the experience regarding the interviews. What do you mean by an interview? What happened in the interview? You just prepare the file and then, neither. And then go to the interview. How many members were there in your interviews? One or two? Two or more? Three? Only one? What's happened there? What do you mean? How you can define the interview? Yes, how you can define the interview? Is there a pre-preparation for the interview from your end as well as the employer end? Exactly. So they already prepared for it. They have a plan. So they have a guide. Okay, today we are going to have the recruitment for the senior manager or a CFO. We have a requirement for the CFO. So then board of management, neither CFO or else whatever the higher party, president, vice president, and then the board, the members, council members, some of the council members. So they are now going to recruit the CEO, whatever the CFO. Right? So, but this committee, it has a purpose. Right? It has a purpose, then they have the guide. Right? Okay, so these are the criterias. Right? If we are going to select the CFO, right? So these are the criteria. They should have it should be a chartered accountant. Okay? Chartered accountant, and then professional experience should be more than 10 years period. Professional experience, working experience should be more than 10 years. Within that one, they need to work in a reputed organization. Reputed organization. So they have a guidance. If it is a CA qualification, okay, we'll give the 25 marks. If it is a previous experience for the 10 years, we will give the 50% marks. Right? For the academic qualification, for a degree and the master's and the PhD academic qualifications, we'll give the 25 marks. Likewise, we should have a predetermined guidance, right? Predetermined guidance, 25 marks, 50 marks, and the again 25 marks. So then it should have a purpose also, right? Purposeful conversation. Why we are doing this interview? We should have the purpose. So what is our purpose? To recruit the CFO. We need to recruit the CFO. That is why we are doing this interview, right? And then there may be two or more individuals. Sometimes it may be a one individual. Sometimes it may be a more than one individual. We are calling this type of a as an interview. So therefore, interview is a what? Is a guided, purposeful conversation between two or more individuals, two or more people. Right. Okay. So there are many type of interviews. There are many type of interviews. What those are? Okay. Tell me the example for interviews. You already faced the interview. So tell me the example for interviews. Yes. What type of individual? What type of interviews? What are the type of interviews? Yes. Any examples? We have the individual interviews as well as the group interviews. Some of the interviews, it may be individual interviews. Sometimes you face the group interviews. What else? Yes. What else? Face-to-face interview. Interview through the telephone. Interview through the online. What else? Yes. Computer guided interviews are there. So these type of interviews basically can be divided into two. Right? So what those are? Structured and the unstructured interview. Right? So we have basic two interviews. So what those are? Structured interviews and the unstructured interview. All of the interview types can be divided, can be categorized into these two. Right? We'll identify first what do you mean by the unstructured interview and the unstructured interview. Yes, structured interview. Any idea behind that? Structured interview. Structure. We have a structure for the interview. We have a structure for the interview. Predetermined structure is there. Conducted when it is known at the outset what information is needed. The content of the structured interview can be prepared in advance, usually consists of. It has three stages. Right? Introduction and step of topics in a logical order, and then suggestions for the probing questions. Right? So these are the three stages. And introduction. You all face the interviews, structured interviews, not the unstructured interviews. Structured interviews. What are the structured interviews? When we are going to the structured interview, definitely they will introduce themselves. Right? So once you see, so they introduce, okay, I'm the person, I'm the vice president, and then he's the president. Just came and yeah. I'm the vice president and he's the president, and then our CEO is there or as council member. There are two council members here, and likewise the chairperson. The chairperson in the interview introduce their self first. They never ask you to introduce yourself first. Once you sit, okay, they never ask, okay, introduce yourself. If it is a structured interview, what they are going to do, they introduce themselves. Okay, good afternoon. I'm Miss Suri. Whatever the member here, and then he is the president, he is the vice president, and there are two council members likewise. They are not normally telling their names, but they are introduce themselves with their positions. Okay. So then once they explain the purpose, not in brief, not in descriptive manner, they just explain, okay, so you are going to face this kind of interview, likewise. So then they ask, okay, introduce yourself, right? Introduce yourself, and then you need to explain yourself. So then set off the topics in logical order. Once you sit there and once they introduce themselves, are they going to give the case study and handle it? No, never. Right? So what they first ask, give a brief introduction about yourself. Tell me about your qualifications. What are the educational qualifications? From where are you? Where are you from? Likewise, they ask the warming up questions, which are easy to answer. First, they ask a simple question from you. Once the 2-3 minutes, after 2-3 minutes, after 5 minutes, after you settle to the place. So they are wait until you settle to the place. Once you identify that environment, then they ask the main question from you. Okay, why did you apply for this job? Why did you apply for this job? What is the reason? If we selected you to this job, how you can contribute to this organization? What are the things you can implement to this organization? Likewise, now logically they are asking the question from you. Once you see it, they never ask, okay, why did you apply for this job? Tell me, once we recruited you, how you can contribute to society or as this organization? They never ask those type of questions as the first questions. So they set a logic. So they have the logical order, right? Meanwhile, so they are having some probing questions also. Suggestions for the probing questions. What do you mean by the probing questions? Follow-up questions that are used when the first answer is unclear or incomplete. In the interviewer does not fully understand the answer or any other cases where the interviewer requires more specific or in-depth information. Okay. Meanwhile, when they are setting this logical order, so if it's like this. Okay. Explain about it. This is example. Explain your education qualifications. Now you are telling that, okay, I'm a graduated from the SAP campus. I'm undergraduate of SAP campus from CES Sri Lanka. Likewise. Now if they don't know about properties at campus CA Sri Lanka, if they are questionable on that one, CA Sri Lanka. So they are asking, you are a student of CA Sri Lanka. So then what happened? What it is? It's a probing question. Now you need to explain, yes. Yes, sir, madam. Yes, sir, madam. Okay, CA is the SAP campus is one of the sub-organization of the CA Sri Lanka. Likewise, or it is a university of SAP. The SAP campus is a university of the Chartered Institute. Likewise, now you need to explain what do you mean by the SAP campus. What is it? It's a probing question. But if the interviewer is not clear about your answer, so they can ask some question from you, which are calling as the probing questions. Right? So likewise, structured interview, what is the main characteristic of the structured interview? It has a flow. It has been predetermined with the purpose, and then it has a logical order. එකපාරටම කඩා පෙන්නලා ප්‍රශ්න අහන්න යන්නේ නැහැ අපි. Right? Whereas unstructured interview, so it will be different with the structured interview. So labeled unstructured interview are so labeled because the interviewer does not enter the interview setting with the planned sequences of the question put in, right, to be asked of the respondent. So very interesting regarding the unstructured interview. If we are doing the qualitative study, if we are doing with the qualitative study, so most probably we are taking the unstructured interview. We don't have the plan. We have an overall plan, but we don't have a logical order for our questions. For example, if you want to identify the SME's difficulties, right? SME difficulties, your research is regarding identification of the factors affecting for the SME growth or whatever the thing. SME growth, we take the SME growth. What are the barriers for the SME growth? Right. So now we went to the Uva province, Badulla. So then we'll take it as a, I don't know whether you're from anyone from the Vellam, not Vellampity, Vellavai. Vellavai. So then there are some SMEs in the Vellavai. So then you go there and you ask from, you selected some SME organization. So as normally their financial literacy is a little bit low. So then you ask their names. Okay, you selected the person Bandar. Bandar is the owner of the SME. Owner of the SME. You select, you go to that place. You have a chat, you have a tea with them. So that is a small shop. So then you go there and you talk with Bandar. You are not going, you just introduce, yes, Bandar, Bandar, Mama Tamai me, Mama me, SAP campus again. Happy me research a kakkar, you just give you a brief introduction. So then you are discussing with the Bandar. Introduce yourself. If it is so, what happened? So then you first ask, කොහොමද මේ දවස්වල business කියලා අහනවා. ඔන්න එතකොට කියනවා නේ what happened? Not that much bad. හොඳයි මහත්තයා. මොකක් හරි කියනවා. එච්චර සරුවක් නෑ ඉතින් කියලා ඔන්න එයා explain කරනවා. ඇයි ඒ කියලා අහනවා. We don't have the flow. We don't have the logical load. So then මොකද්ද මොනවද මේ දවස්වල නෑ ඉතින් නේද government එකත් වෙනස් වුණානේ. නේ හාලුත් ගණන් ඉතින් අපිට එච්චර business නෑ කියලා දැන් ඔන්න enter වෙනවා. We are discussing. පස්සේ ඒ රජය වෙනස් වුණාට ඉතින් ඔයාලට ප්‍රශ්නයක් නෑ මහත්තයා නේද දෙන සහන ආධාරත් වෙනස් කරලා. එහෙම නැත්නම් තව අප්ග්‍රේඩ් කරන්නත් පුළුවන් අපිට. දැන් අපිට හොඳයි නේ. business හොඳට තියෙනවා. government එකත් වෙනස් වුණානේ. I'm not reflecting for the governments. So then I'm not describe this is just example, right? Not degrading or whatever the thing. So then government එකත් හොඳයි. සහන ආධාරත් තියෙනවා. අපිට අස්වැසුමක් තියෙනවා. business වලට හොඳයි කියලා මොකද කරන්නේ? They are explaining. Now based on their answers you are going to determine the next question. You don't have the flow. You don't have the logical order. Logical order එකකට අපි කවදාකවත් unstructured interview එකේදී logical order එකකට තියාගෙන යන්නේ නැහැ questions. එහෙම අහන්න බෑ අපිට questions. සමහරවිට එතනින් එහාට if we have the logical order, if we have the predetermined order for the question, if the respective person give the answer no, you can't follow the other one. You can't ask the other question. එතනින් එහාට ඉවරයි. So very interesting. Unstructured interview is very interesting and we are taking for the qualitative studies. Really interesting. Based on the answer of the respondent, we determine the second question. Based on the second answer, we determine the next flow. Likewise, we don't have the predetermined planned question or is the interviewee setting with the planned sequence. So there are no any plan for the sequences of the questions. No any plan for the logical order. We are calling this one as the unstructured interview. Unstructured interview. So we need to go to the in-depth investigation. We have the plan, we have the plan in our mindset, but based on their discussion, based on the answers provided by the respondents, we need to we need to identify the next question. We have to create the flow based on their answers. Right. So we are calling it as an unstructured interview. I hope it's clear to you the difference between structured and the unstructured interviews. Right. Face-to-face and the telephone interviews. Face-to-face interviews. What do you mean by the face-to-face interviews? Interviews can be conducted either through the face-to-face or over the telephone. Structured interviews. Now we are going to have the discussion about the type of structured interviews. So then face-to-face interviews. We have the face-to-face interview. Some of the unstructured interviews also conducted in normally the face-to-face. Face-to-face interview means we go to the place and we have a discussion with the respondents to face-to-face. Telephone interviews, we are conducting the interview through the telephone. Lot of telephone interviews may be there in the today's context. Why? Through the telephone conversation, through the telephone interviews, we can reduce the cost. Huge cost. We don't need to pay for the interviewers. We don't need to arrange the places. We don't need to give the meals for them. We don't need to waste the utilization or else whatever the final fixed overhead. Very simple. Telephone conversation. We have the predetermined questions. We ask the question and determine whether this respective person is suitable for the next stage. Normally, we are not conducting the telephone interviews for the final stage interview selections, but normally we are conducting, if there are a lot of pool, if there are a lot of members in the pool, we are conducting the telephone interviews and filter them to the final stage. Telephone interviews. The next one. Computer assist interviews, right? Through the computer assisted interview, we can have the interview through the computer assisted way, right? So then with the computer assisted interview, CAI, questions are flashed on the computer screen and then interviewer can enter the answers of the respondents directly to the computer. So then the accuracy of data collection is considerably enhanced since the software can be programmed to flag the off base or out of the range responses. Some of the, yes, normally for the Korean exam, likewise for the higher education programs, they are conducting these kind of interviews. And so they are conducting the interviews through the computers. So they have the questions, so the respondent need to give the answer. So then the right or wrong answer may be marked after you answered for all the question and you will be allocating the marks, right? So then group interviews. What happened? Group interviews. Interviews may be conducted on the individual basis but also on a group basis, where the interviewer puts open question to the group of participants. Then the term focus group is used to particular type of group interview, where the topic is clearly defined and there is a focus on the facilitating discussion between the participant. Group of individuals are going to interview this particular participant, group of interviews. You can conduct individual interviews, you can conduct the interviews as the group work also. So then focus group. Focus group means, what do you mean by the focus group? The specialty of this focus group, we have a lot of members and then the moderator is leading the interview. Moderator is dealing with this, moderator moderate this discussion. You can ask the question. So then moderator moderate the question and present it to the panel members. Right. Likewise, the focus group interviews is made there. The specialty is the moderator is there with the typical group members for the interview. Right. So these are the normal things. These are the normal interviews which can be tested for your research. Right. Observation. Interviews done. The first method is interviews. The second one, observation. Observation. You can observe the data. Right. So what do you mean by the observation? It's a way of gathering data by watching behavior. As a researcher, you may have the chance to watch the behavior of the individual or else group of individuals, group of people. And then you have the chance to watch in the events. Meanwhile, you have the chance to notify the physical characteristics. All these are happening in which kind of environment? Natural setting. Right. For example, if I want to identify your behavior, normally we are doing it, no? Normally lecturers are evaluating or else identifying your behavior at the classes. I can observe your behavior. Some of are very silent, some of are very talkative, some of are talkative and doing the work, some are only talkative, some are gossiping. Likewise, what happened? We can observe your behavior. Some are sleeping, some are just log into the session. If I check the active participants here, I don't know how many participants there. Okay, we'll see. So there are 56 participants, but if I ask a question from you, actively there may be 20 or 70, 17 students may be there. Others are in something else. So therefore, Pute, we can observe your characteristics. We can observe your behavior. Sometimes by looking at some events, we can observe that events also. Observation. You are watching and gather the data. The next point, observation can be overt. That means everyone knows they are being observed. And the other one, covert. Sometimes if we want to, on පොඩි කාලේ ඔයාලා ඉගෙනගෙන එක වසර දෙක වසරදී මතක ඇති සමහර ලාවට මොකද කියන්නේ ඔන්න ටීචර්ස්ලාගේ ලෙක්චර් ටීචර්ස්ලා කරන ලෙසන්ස් වලට ඔන්න එනවා ප්‍රින්සිපල් නකට මොකද ටීචර් කියන්නේ අද එනවා පුතේ ප්‍රින්සිපල් කියලා කියනවා. අතට ප්‍රින්සිපල් ආපුවම මොකද වෙන්නේ? කටවල් අහගෙනනේ කට වහගෙන ඉතින් හොඳට හැසිරෙනවා. එතකොට that means what happened? Everyone's know they are being observed. Principal එනවා කියලා කියනවා. Sometimes the teacher evaluating you. You don't know. You don't know you are being studied. That what happened? You don't know, covered. Some of the researchers, more especially for the, as I remember, I told that story to you, the famous professor who wrote the book, The Beggar in Sri Lanka, right? He observed the data based on the ethnography stage, ethnography data collection method, ethnography strategy. So then he acted as a beggar and he observed the data. Everyone, they don't know they are being observed, covered. So therefore, observation is a very good strategy for the qualitative research. Quantitative studies, we can't take the observations. Right. The other one, Pute, administrating questionnaires. Third one, questionnaires. Observation, interviews, and third one, questionnaires. Questionnaires, I hope you already fill the questionnaires. Semester evaluations, lecture evaluations, you may given that one. Sometimes you have the experience in filling the research questionnaires for your friends, other university friends, in questionnaires. Questionnaire in the sense, it includes some questions. You need to tick it or else you need to fill it. You can give the names, you can use a nominal scale. So sometimes the questions ask, what is your name? What is your gender? What is your current position? So those are nominal scales. So then sometime it may ask, so rank your education qualifications. What are your education qualifications in the PhD, masters, basic, bachelors, likewise diplomas, A-level, low level, grade 5, likewise. Questions. So in the ordinal scale. Sometimes some questions may be there, the interval scales, 5-point Likert scale questions. Sometimes there may be questions for the ordinal scales. Are you satisfied? Are you satisfied? Or is how your religion is important to you? Right? In that sense, you can't take it as a 5-point Likert scale. You have to take the ordinal case. Very important and likewise. So there are a lot of questions. There are a lot of type of questions which may be included to the questionnaire. Question in the sense prashnavaliyak. Mahitanoid experience. Through the questionnaires also, we can collect the data. We can collect the data for our research. Normally, the students who are dealing with the primary data, they are using the questionnaire to collect the data. Okay, what is mean by a questionnaire? It's a pre-formulated written set of questions to which respondents report their answers, usually within rather closely defined alternatives. You may given the alternatives. For the primary data questionnaires, you may given the answers. You need to select the answers. Which one is more suitable to you? You need to give the alternative. You have been given alternatives. You need to select the one or two alternatives right, in the questionnaire. Type of questionnaires. Type of questionnaires. We identified three types of questionnaire. First one, personally administrated questionnaires. Personally administrated questionnaires. The second one, mail questionnaires. The third one, electronic and the online questionnaires. Electronic and the online questionnaires. Personally administrated questionnaires. What do you mean by the personally administrated questionnaires? Yes, when the survey is confirmed to the local area, a good way to collect the data is personally administer the questionnaires. And that means a physical questionnaire. If you are going to do a research regarding the customer satisfaction of the People's Bank in Colombo district. Right. So how can you find the questionnaire? How can you find the online questionnaire? Or else how can you find the customers? Through the online platform? No, you can't. Therefore, what you can do is you can go to the banks and you ask the customers to okay, fill this questionnaire. You give the questionnaire, hard copy to them. Ask them to fill it. Personally administrated questionnaires. Mail questionnaires. Yes, it's also self-administrated, the questionnaire that is sent to the respondent via the email. Questionnaire will be sent to the respondent via the email. So you have the directory list. If you are doing the corporate governance, board characteristics, you need to observe the data from the board members. You find the annual report, you identify the board members, and you collected the mails of these board members. You don't need to go to the board members' place since you have the access through this annual report. Let's assume the annual report includes the board members' email also. So then what you can do, you can send your questionnaire through the email. So then we are calling it as a mail questionnaires. Electronic and the online questionnaires. Online questionnaires are often used to gain the deeper understanding of the customer opinions and the preference. So there are some type of questionnaires, electronic and the online questions. You have to fill it once you give the answer, or else once you have that service. So they ask whether you're satisfied to this. And then they will give some answers. So they will give some other questions to fill it. Right? Online or electronic question. So most probably, students are taking the research students, so they can take the personally administrated questionnaires and the mail questionnaires. Nowadays, we are taking the Google Forms to prepare these questionnaires. Right. So then here it is mentioned the advantages and disadvantages of the different type of questionnaires. You can read those advantages and disadvantages and can understand. Right. So when you are preparing the interviews as well as when you are reading for the questionnaire, interview plus the guidelines already uploaded to the LMS, you can refer the what kind of guidelines you need to have when you are developing the questionnaires and reading for the interview. Okay. Data collection methods, now okay. You can go with the either observations, interviews, and then what is the other one? Questionnaires. Right. Now we need to identify the steps of this data collection. Steps. How we can collect the data. Now we are always ready to collect the data. No? Always ready to collect the data. Now collection of data. So it involves how many steps? 6 steps, right? So we have 6 steps. The first one, you need to identify the issues and the opportunities for the collecting data. You have to first identify what kind of issues that I need to face. When I am collecting the data. මට මිනිස්සු ගහලා පන්නයිද දන්නේ මේ question එක දුන්නාම කියලා හිතන්න. You need to identify. So then select the issues and the opportunities and set the goals. Meanwhile, as a first step, you need to identify the objective also. What is your objectives? What is your objective? What is my research question? You need to have it. So then you have to identify the issue and opportunities and set the goals. How I can collect the data. So these are my frameworks. Third one, plan and approach and methods. Under the methods, approaches, you have to identify these components. What is the first one? Who will be the data? Sorry, who will the data be collected about? Who will the group of interest to be compared to? And how long will the data be collected? The data time period. Am I taking a 2 years period, or else am I taking 2 weeks period or 1 month period, or within 1 day am I going to collect the data? You have to consider on the time period. You have to plan it first. So then from whom I am going to collect the data? What is my location? If I am doing the research for the Colombo district, the customer satisfaction of the People's Bank, regarding the People's Bank in the Colombo district, you have to identify the geographical location. Do I need to go that places physically, or shall I go to the online method? You have to identify the location. Then what categories will be used to identify the group of interest and comparative group? How should data be collected? Am I going to use the primary data? Am I going with the quantitative research? Am I going with the qualitative research? If it is so, am I going to use the primary data or secondary data? You need to identify. So then, what sources of data should be used to collect the information? Is it a survey? Is it an interview? Is it an observation? If it is an interview, is it a structured or unstructured interview? Is it a face-to-face interview? You need to identify those things before you start your data collection procedure. Okay, now you have the objectives, you have to set the goals, and then you identify these approaches. As the fourth step, you can collect the data without any issues. You can collect the data. So then analyze and interpret the data. Once you collect the data, you have to analyze it. If it is a quantitative method, you have a lot of statistical method to analyze it. You can analyze it. So then as a step number 6, you can act on the results. You can interpret the results. So these are my results. So this is my data collected data. Based on the collected data, I have run the regression, correlation, t-test, and likewise such a test. And then based on the results, based on the test results, so I have to interpret the result. Okay, customers are really satisfied with the People's Bank services in the Colombo district. You have to give the actions. You have to give the results on your analysis. Okay. Once you collected the data, you need to measure the goodness of measures. Right? Goodness of measures. We have to measure the goodness of data. We collected the data. Is this data are reliable? How much is the goodness? Goodness of data. Goodness of data can be identified through major two concepts, very important. Reliability and the validity. Right? There are several branches under reliability and validity, but we'll identify just what you mean by the reliability and validity. right? You need to check the collected data's reliability and collected data's validity, right? Okay, before moving to the identification of reliability and validity, you need to identify first the item analysis, right? Item analysis. The main consideration is identification of goodness. When we identify the goodness of data, මේ data හොඳයිද කියලා බලන්න. හොඳයිද කියලා බලනකොට the first thing you need to identify here පුතේ item analysis. You need to analyze the items. What are the items? I hope you remember. You have the indicators. You have the dimensions. You have the variables. So then what do you mean by the item analysis? What do you mean by the item analysis? Each indicator you need to check. You need to check whether these identified indicators willing to measure the or is willing to measure or is willing to identify or is willing to measure the variable. We have identified A1, A2, A3 like the A4 as the indicators of A. We have the variable A. The variable A is measuring through the A1, A2, A3, A4. Now you need to analyze the items. What are the items? A and A main item, A1 to A4. First, you need to identify whether this identified A1 is willing to measure the A. Right? The second one, again, you need to identify whether this identified indicator A2 is willing to or is able to measure the main variable A. Third one, you need to identify whether the A3 is able to measure the A main variable A properly. Next one, the other variable A4 or as indicator, A4 indicator is able to measure the main item A. You have to identify those things. Item-wise items you need to analyze is these identified items are really measuring the variables, really measuring our instrument. Item analysis. Sometimes the A1 and A4 are similar. Even we include the A1 to A as well as A2 to A. A1 and A2 both same measures. Even the name is different. But the measurement is even we include the A1 or A2, it measures the same one. It's like this. So we take it here. A1. This is A1. I got it. I got it. This is A2, right? A2. And then A3. We have A3 also. The next one, A4. So these four indicators measures the variable A. The main variable is A. The main variable is A. ප්‍රධානම variable එක මොකක්ද? A. A කියන එක බලන්නේ කොහොමද? A1, A2, A3, A4 කියන variables ටික අරගෙන තමයි මෙන්න මේ A කියන එක නම measure කරන්නේ. Likewise, we can link all the variables, all the indicators with this variable A1. Sorry. Like this. You need to identify whether this A1 to A4 is willing to measure this A. We are calling this as an item analysis. Sometime what's happened, even we include the A1 and A2, those are same, right? And then A3 and A4 same measurements with the different name, but the thing that we are going to measure is same as the A1 and A2. If it is so, so there are some incident. There are some incident because why? We are taking the questionnaire from we normally to the research, we are taking the predetermined or as pre-developed question. So then some of the items which are not suitable for our research context, then you need to remove those items. How we can remove that items to the item analysis, right? So we can run the factor analysis. So then we can identify whether these items are really measuring the variable A. If not, you need to remove and then you have to run the new model. You have to run the new model. So that is why we are always telling to you, okay, take the paper or else take the questionnaires which has been listed in a very good journal, right? You, when you are reading or else when you are referring literature review, take the best papers. Why? The best papers in the sense, so those are having the standards. Those are having the standards. Unless they have the standards, so the publishers, they are not going to publish that kind of articles in their websites. If we are taking the good base paper, no need to make some adjustments for our item analysis. But if we are referring some predatory journals, some of the items, they doesn't measure the changes of the variables. In that sense, you have to remove that items. How you can remove that items? You have to run some statistical techniques. So there are some statistical techniques, factor analysis, content analysis, and likewise, you have to obey the statistical guidelines as per that analysis. Now, first you check the item analysis. Second one, you need to check the reliability and validity. Both reliability and the validity. Reliability, right? What do you mean by the reliability? How consistently a method measures something. Reliability is about the consistency of the measure. What do you mean by the reliability? Consistency. Whether your measurement are consistent. Even you give the answer questionnaire to the person A, person B, your answers are consistent. Or else if you give the same questionnaire to the person A twice, the answers may be the same answers. That is, there are that kind of a chance. You need to measure reliability. When you apply the same method, to the same sample under the same condition, you should gain the same results for that. Right? So then I have a research. So then what I can do is I have shared the questionnaire to the the Prakash. I said I send the questionnaire to Prakash the first time at the lecture. During the lecture time, I give the questionnaire. 12. Let's assume we are starting the lecture at 12 to 3. 12:05, I'll give the questionnaire to Prakash. So then again, during the tea break also, I gave the same questionnaire to Prakash. That means 1:30. Again, before 5 minutes to the wind up the class, 2:55, I'll give the same questionnaire to the Prakash. If the answers provided in these 3 times by Prakash is same, the paper or the questionnaire is having a reliability. Same questionnaire, that means same method to the same sample, that is Prakash. Same condition during the lecture time, you should get the same answers, same results. If not, your questionnaire is not reliable one. Not reliable one. Right. So you can test 2 type of reliability. Right. So 2 test of stability. Yes, test the retest reliability and then the parallel from the reliability. That you can identify those things when it's come to the analysis context. Reliability, it has some statistical techniques. We are taking the cone branch alpha to measure it. And so there are some other techniques also. The other one, validity measures. Validity measures. Validity is another perspective. Right? What do you mean by the validity? How well an instrument that is developed measures the particular concept it is intended to measure. We have the objectives. Researchers, they have the objectives. So based on the objectives, so they are measuring, they are collecting the data. Based on the objective, they collected the data. So then what do you mean by the validity? What is the purpose? Right? Whether this questionnaire, whether this instrument is able to measure what it intended to measure. Right? So then we have the two measurement, two validities. We are called 2 type of validities, internal validity and the external validity. Internal validity and the external validity. බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන දේ මේකෙන් ඉෂ්ට වෙනවද කියන එක තමයි validity කියලා කියන්නේ. Reliability කියලා කියන්නේ එකම questionnaire එක different conditions එකම condition එක යටතේ different times වල allocate කරපුවාම ඒකට එන answer එක same result එකක්. ඒක questionnaire එක කාට දුන්නත් මොන අවස්ථාවක දුන්නත් ඒ එන answers එක වෙන්න ඕනේ. එහෙම නැත්නම් ප්‍රකාශන දීලා තියෙන පළවෙනි අවස්ථාවේදී තියෙන answers entirely different tea break එකේ දුන්නට වඩා. tea break එකේ දීලා තියෙන answers ආයෙත්මත් වෙනස් වෙනවා. Before the class, before winding up the class. Question එක. ඒකට ඒවා මොනවද පුතේ? The 3 occasions, the 3 different answers, not reliable. Right, not reliable. So then internal validity. Internal validity. Internal validity is we will be concerned about the issues of the authenticity of the cause-effect relationship, right? So what is the relationship? What is the, we are identifying we are going to inquire about the relationship between 2 variables. What is the cause-effect? Cause and effect relationship. And then the generalizability to the external environment is identified as the external validity. For example, the external validity, we are sharing the questionnaire to the SMEs. Same research, A and B, the relationship between A and B in the SME sector, right? So then, can you give the same questionnaire to the A? We are going to test the A relationship between A and B, but to the manufacturing companies, right? So can you generalize this variable? Can you generalize this questionnaire to the other parties, which is called external validity? Right? Internal validity in the sense is concerned about the authenticity of the cause and effect relationship, whether the A is able to measure the variation of B. What is our variable? The relationship between A and B. So then the internal validity in the sense what it expects to measure is actually measuring or else no. So therefore, whether this A is measuring correctly the changes in B. or changes in y, whatever the dependent variable. We are calling it as an internal validity. Right? Internal validity also we have some measures, discriminant validity and the AVE. Likewise, we have the several tests to measure the validity also. Right. So that is how we can wind up this session. We are going to, here we have identified the method, data collection methods, right? We have main components, what those are. The first one is, what do you mean by the quantitative and qualitative research? And then what is the difference between primary and the secondary data? So then you have the data collection method. You have the chance to go with the interview data. You can go to the questionnaire method. You can go to the observation. Likewise, you have several methods to collect the data. You need to select the data collection method based on the type of research and the data of the data type which are going to be collected. Then once we collected the data through according to the collection procedure, you need to measure the goodness of data, whether the data are accurate or not, whether the collected data accurate or not. We need to measure the goodness of data before moving to the analysis. Right? Why? If we analyze the wrong data, what happens? Definitely the answers are wrong. Therefore, before moving to the analysis, once after you collected the data, you need to check the goodness of data. How you can check the goodness of data? There are 3 stages. You need to first make the item analysis. You need to remove the factors which are not measuring the real changes of the dependent or whatever the variable. You need to remove some items. And then once you remove the items, you need to check the reliability and the validity concept. Reliability and the validity of your collected data. Collected data should be reliable and validity should have the validity to go for the next step. Right. Okay. So this is the data collection method lesson. Any questions? Okay. Now, we can move to the analysis part, right? I'm not going to explain the analysis technique and other things. I'm just going to explain what are the analysis techniques you can select. I just name those things. I'm not going to analyze. I just explain what are the analysis techniques and how you can select that analysis techniques in line with your objectives, right? I'm not going to explain that analysis techniques in detail. Huh? Just I will tell you how you can select the analysis technique. Analysis technique will in-depthly discuss in the second semester. Right. Okay, quantitative data analysis. Make the heading quantitative data analysis. We are going to discuss the data analysis. Data analysis. Okay. So these are the intended learning objectives and the learning outcomes. What we are going to discuss, first we identify the type of data analysis techniques. There are 2 types of data analysis technique. If it is a quantitative analysis, you have to deal with the quantitative data analysis techniques. And if it is a qualitative data analysis technique, you have to deal with if it is a qualitative research, you have to deal with the qualitative data analysis techniques. And then We'll identify the, what do you mean by the hypothesis? We identified the hypothesis and some of the hypothesis testing criteria in the lesson operationalization and the conceptualization, and then the writing techniques of the data analysis output. So then application of the software packages for the data analysis, right? What kind of softwares you can use. Okay. As I initially told you, if we are dealing with the quantitative research, right? If we are dealing with the quantitative research, quantitative data analysis techniques are different. If you are dealing with the qualitative analysis, qualitative research, you have to deal with the qualitative data analysis techniques, right? So those are two different. So therefore, you should have a mindset. What kind of a research am I going to handle? Is it a quantitative? Is it a qualitative? Qualitative data analysis techniques when us, quantitative data analysis techniques when us, right? So then, qualitative data analysis techniques includes description and subjective information. Description and the subjective information. What do you mean by the description and subjective information? Normally, when we are collecting the qualitative data, we are just not taking the numbers. We are taking the views. We are taking the perception of individuals. We are taking the beliefs, sometimes beliefs, values, and etc. So normally those are descriptive nature. Descriptive nature. We can't be, if we are asked the question like this, okay, how do you think about your culture? Is it a just word? Is that the answer is just word? No. So they are giving the answers in a descriptive way. They describe their culture. So therefore, quantitative data analysis include the description. You need to analyze the descriptions. And then the person to person, these answers are different. The person to person, these answers are different, totally different. For example, if I ask the question, what do you think about your culture? The answer provided by I can't remember the name, Roshan. Roshan is different with the Sandru, whatever the person. Or else yes, I can't remember your names, and the Nimesh. The answers, there are subjective answers, subjective information. Information are subject to person, right? So then we have the qualitative data analysis technique. We just discussed those things. I'm not going to in-depthly discuss the qualitative data analysis technique. I will just introduce those things. First one, content analysis. Right? What do you mean by the content analysis? Content, as name implies, what we are going to do? We are going to analyze the textual, visual, or sometimes it may be the audio context to identify the patterns, to identify the themes. What we are going to analyze? We are going to analyze the contextual, visual, or is audio content. Audio content to identify the patterns, right? Identify the patterns and themes, or sometimes it may need to identify the meanings by analyzing this visual, audio context or textual context, right? What may be the examples? What are the what we are going to do in the context and content analysis? We just inquire about, we just identify the themes, pattern according and by analyzing some visual or as audio context. Give me some examples. If you want to identify the gender behavior of some advertisement. Advertisement. It's a visual advertisement. We'll take, yes, visual advertisement. We want to identify the behavior of the advertisement. We want to identify the gender behavior. How the female behavior in this kind of advertisement and how the male behave in this kind of advertisement. How their behavior. Right? How they behave, what kind of a behavior they are. We are going to analyze the content. We analyze the content and have the idea, right? So TV commercials, especially TV commercials, may analyze sometime the drama series. We have the chance to analyze their content, Right? Content, we analyze their visual, we analyze their audios, and then identify, is there any pattern? Every drama series, the Korean drama series, මට නම් මතක නැහැ. එතකොට සුජාත දියණී කියන්නේ ඊට පස්සේ අපි බලනවා ඊට පස්සේ content අපි බලනවා සුජාත දියණී කියලාගේ pattern එක කොහොමද? How these women may behave in their culture, in the what China or likewise in Japan or likewise. So then the next one, මේ සුජාත දියණීගෙන් පස්සේ අභීත දියණී. But again we are analyzing their patterns. The princess, how they behave in their in their work within their work frame, within their context. And then ඊට පස්සේ ආව සූර්ය දියණී, අභීත දියණී, සූර්ය දියණී, සුජාත දියණී. We are looking through these visuals. And we can identify by looking at their behavior. සුජාත දියණී කොහොමද ඇසිරෙන්නේ, අභීත දියණී කොහොමද ඇසිරෙන්නේ, යාළගේ life frame එක කොහොමද, මේ වගේ pattern එකක් තියෙනවද? Just we definitely identify their pattern. If they are working in the balance, then what happen? So their life is limited. So they have the framework. So now we can identify their content. We have the analysis, we can analyze their content. Right. So then the next one, the thematic analysis. Very interesting analysis. Even unfortunately, you don't have the access, but thematic analysis. What you are going to do is, it's a very common method for the qualitative data analysis techniques. You are identifying and analyzing. You can identify and you can analyze the themes by reading these contexts. For example, if you want to identify, when you're observing this data, when you're observing this qualitative data, by reading those things, you may be able to identify some patterns. For example, the challenges. If we identify the challenges for the chartered accountants. So then list down the challenges for the chartered accountants. Let's assume you all are the chartered accountants. Now one by one I'm asking the question, what are the challenges faced by you? What are the challenges for you? You describe it. So then Prakash, a chartered accountant. So he conclude that by interviewing him, so I can identify that communication issue is a one matter. Communication issues. Again, the next person will take Nimesh, chartered accountant. So now he is going to explain about more, and then work-life balance. Work-life balance. Another issue. He explained about more. Out of that one, he explained it more, but the theme is, the main content is work-life balance. He can't manage his life plus the work. And the Prakash, based on Prakash explanation, I can take communication is the matter. Third one, person C, Kavindi. I can't remember the name. So then technical issues, technical challenges. Computers, no computers, they don't provide proper computers, working computers, and technical challenges. Again, if I ask the question from the 17B exemption batch coordinator or as a chartered accountant, so what are the barriers? Again, he is explaining the work-life balance. Now what I can do? I can put that answer to the theme work-life balance. Because I have identified 3 themes. What those are? The first one, communication theme. And the second theme is work-life balance. The third theme is technical issues. What I can do? So then I can put these several answers into 3 themes. Technical, and the other one communication, and the other one, the last one, it's the work-life balance. Now I can put the answers into the themes. We are calling it as a thematic analysis. Thematic analysis. Okay, the next one, narrative analysis. Narrative. What do you mean by the narrative analysis? Narrative analysis, we examine the stories. We examine some stories to understand how they behave. How they behave, or is how these individuals create meaning through their narratives. For example, if I want to explain yes, we'll take it as like this. Sorry. We'll take the life experience of the cancer patients. The life experience of the cancer patients. So those who are suffering from the cancers, if we go to them and ask their stories, what happened? So we will be able to examine their stories. Examine their stories, and we can understand how they act in that scenario, how this individual construct meaning through their narratives, through their stories. So we will be able. So then likewise, if you want to analyze the SME's performance or the barriers of the SMEs, what you can do? You can ask the stories of the persons who developed the SMEs into the PLC level. You can ask their stories. Very interesting. Narrative analysis. ගිහිල්ලා අහලා බලලා personal experience එක අරගෙන අපි analyze කරනවා. Narrative analysis. So the next one, grounded theory. Right? Grounded theory analysis. Normally, grounded theory in the systematic approach. It's a systematic approach. Why we are doing grounded theory? To develop the theory. To develop the theory in a grounded level. Right? Normally, when we are going to the quantitative analysis, we are measuring, or else we are testing the existing theories now in the quantitative analysis. But in the grounded theory, qualitative research method, we just provide the hints to develop some theories. We can't just develop the theories, but we are providing the grounded for these theories. Grounded. For example, we'll take, yes, entrepreneurs. If the entrepreneurs in the sense imagine area, entrepreneurs, how the entrepreneurs face their failures. How they face their failures, or is what kind of things they have learned from their failures. How they mitigate their failures. They navigate their failures. If you ask that, how do they navigate their failures? So they are in during the COVID-19 period. So they may give some ideas. So what you can do is you can interview the founders of these SMEs. You can interview the founders, you can interview the owners. So then they will give us the resilience. Learning from support. Sorry, yes, learning from the mistakes. Learning from the mistakes. We have the resilience, we learn from the mistake likewise. So they give us some hints. So what you can do is, regarding these entrepreneurship area, you can give some hints to the future researchers or the next researchers to develop some theories regarding the entrepreneur or entrepreneurship. Grounded theory analysis. Grounded theory analysis. The last one, disclose analysis. What do you mean by the disclose analysis? Yes. Disclosures. Here we study how the language, yes, exactly how the language is used in the social, Sometimes it may be in the cultural context, in the social context. Fine, but yes, focusing on their power dynamics, right? Likewise, how they have communicated. The language, we are identifying the language, how they behave, uh, how they behave, or how they conducted, how they control the language in this social context, in the cultural context, focusing on their power dynamics. For example, what may be the examples? Disclose analysis. What we are doing in the disclose analysis? Yes, the political. Yes, when it's come to the election campaigns, when it's come to the election campaign, how the political people, yes, how the politicians disclose, or else how the politician behave their, or else use their words. You can analyze those things. You can identify, you can review their speech, their debates. So they have a lot of debates in the series through the media series, and likewise you can analyze those things, how they pronounce their words, or is how they behave, how they manage their words. Disclose analysis, right? So are they are using the what kind of words, how they control their words, how they manage their words for the future works, and likewise you have the chance to analyze the some of the language patterns in the social, in the cultural context. Disclose analysis. Very interesting analysis, qualitative analysis, very interesting, but sometimes we are not normally allowing you to do the qualitative analysis, but interesting. Right? Now, the other one, quantitative and data analysis. Quantitative data analysis rather than the explanation. So there are deep explanation. Just we are going through the type of analysis with the brief explanation. Quantitative data analysis. Quantitative data analysis. Now we are moving towards our one, quantitative data. Right? So quantitative data analysis is a systematic process of examining, interpreting, and drawing the meaningful conclusion from the numerical data. Right? So we have the process, systematic process. We have the systematic process of examining plus interpreting and coming with the conclusion from the numerical data. What we are going to do, we are going to collect the data, we run the statistical method or the computational techniques or mathematical models, and then we identify the pattern or relationship for trends, and with the databases or as with the provided collected data, and we have to interpret the data. Okay, this is a plus A, their regression results show that there is a relationship between A and B. Now you can confirm that, okay, I have conducted the research to test the relationship between A and B. Now the statistical techniques prove there is a positive relationship A and B. Okay, so this is my conclusion. Quantitative analysis always based on the analysis plus the numerical data handling. Right. Okay, the difference between we'll later on discuss in-depth quantitative analysis techniques, but just we'll identify what are the differences between quantitative data analysis as well as the qualitative data analysis technique. Okay, right. With that, we'll have a 5 minutes break and come. Okay, it's already I have to complete this lesson, plus I'm going to discuss the proposal structure today. So therefore, please take a 10 minutes break and come. Okay, we'll start. I hope you all can see the slide, the difference between quantitative and the qualitative data analysis techniques. Okay, right. We'll first consider the data types, right? So normally for the quantitative data analysis, we are taking the numbers, numerical data. Whereas in the qualitative data, we are taking the text, not the numbers, right? Text data, customer feedbacks, their opinion, their perception, their notes, likewise, but we are taking the text data for the qualitative data analysis. Whereas in the quantitative data analysis, we are taking the numbers, statistics, measurements, numerical data. Data collection methods. If it is a quantitative one, we are taking the surveys. We are taking the, sometimes we can take the experiment also if it is a quantitative one. And we ask the questions, we can share the questionnaires with them, close-ended questions with the close-ended surveys. Close-ended question. That means if we are doing a quantitative analysis, we can collect the primary data, but we are not asking the respondents to explain the answers. That means close-ended. We give the options to them. So then they need to select the option. Whether they are like, dislike, need strongly agree, or else whether they are satisfied, not satisfied. We give them the answers. We give them the alternatives. Okay, you select which one is most preferable for you. Close-ended surveys. Whereas in the quantitative analysis, we are taking the open-ended questions. Open-ended questions, what do you mean by the open-ended questions? Right? We ask them the question, we ask the question from them, and they are given the descriptive nature questions. We are not limiting the questions for them. We are not limiting the answers. Right? You describe your own way. If we, okay, explain about a experience regarding the SMEs. You describe it. So they then tell us the story of how they have created it, what are the barriers, and likewise. That means descriptive interviews are there. If it is a quantitative analysis, what kind of a question you can use? The question may be started with what? What? What is the impact? What is the relationship? Why? The how, next word how much, how this happens. Sometimes we can use the why also, but not most probably we are taking the word why in certain extent. In sometimes we are taking the, rarely we are taking the why, the WH format why. If it is a qualitative data analysis technique, we can start with definitely why and how, what. Right? So that means normally Y is most probably taking the qualitative data analysis. How can be both qualitative plus the quantitative, and what normally taking for the quantitative data analysis technique. Other than that one, we can start with the do, does, is, are for the quantitative analysis. Most important thing, you have to include this one in your research proposal also. What is the software? What is the research software you can use for your research? Research software, so there are a lot of research softwares. Some are specifically handle the quantitative, whereas some are specialized for the qualitative. In vivo, at last. So those are the some of the research softwares which can be used to the qualitative data analysis technique. Most probably the in vivo. In vivo in Sri Lankan context, we are taking the in vivo. Right? So there are some others also. quantitative data analysis technique, we have a lot of quantitative data analysis softwares. SPSS, Smart PLS, E-Waves, R, MOS, right? Startup, right? So those are the statistical software. Startup, R, SPSS, Smart PLS, MOS, likewise. So those are the some of research softwares which can be used to the quantitative analysis. The basic software is some of the you who are expected to do their or else who are expected to stop their degree at the third year, second semester. So they need to do the research project. Research project or they have the electives, project or package-based data, right? In the package-based data analysis, we are doing the SPSS, right? The lecturer will lecture about the SPS, how to run the SPSS with the statistical tools, right? So then basic software that you can use to handle the third year second semester research project is the Excel sheet. Basic research, Excel also a good software for the quantitative analysis. Some of the functions, some of the quantitative data analysis techniques can be handled by the Excel sheet. Right? So therefore, Excel also the basic quantitative data analysis technique. Data analysis tool, not technique tool. Okay. Normally, quantitative analysis, we are taking the larger sample for the quantitative analysis, but in the qualitative analysis, the sample size is small to middle, because it's a descriptive nature. Right. Now, so this is the difference between quantitative and the qualitative data analysis techniques. The next one. Now we are moving towards the quantitative data analysis techniques. What are the quantitative data analysis technique and how we can take the basic idea regarding the quantitative data analysis techniques. Right. So quantitative data analysis techniques employ two techniques. What are the two techniques? The first one with a descriptive statistic, the other one inferential statistics. Right. We have the descriptive statistics and the inferential statistic. I hope you know descriptive statistic. What do you mean by the descriptive statistics? It summarizes. Okay? It summarizes the data set. Features of the data set. So you can identify the mean, median, mode, the mean, median, mode, standard deviation, range, what is the lowest value and what is the highest value, what is the difference of it, right? Descriptive nature, descriptive statistics. Descriptive statistics summarize, describe your data set. If you are running the quantitative analysis, first you need to run the descriptive statistic. Right? You need to show the mean, median, mode, standard deviation of your data set. Then inferential statistics. Inferential statistics, the second method. Ne? So inferential statistics measures or else identify the predictions. Prediction, broader sense, or else the hypothesis is prediction from the sample database to make the broad influence about the entire population, such as hypothesis testing, regression analysis, correlation analysis. So those are the inferential statistics. Inferential statistics in the sense we don't have the chance to collect the data from the entire population. Accordingly, we are taking the sample for our research, not the entire population. We are now going to collect the data from the sample and we have the data. Based on the sample data, what we are going to do, we are going to make some prediction. We are going to test our analysis techniques as per our objectives and we are going to generalize it to the population. Inferential statistics to identify the prediction, analysis and etc. Right. Descriptive statistics, we explain about the descriptive statistics, what it used for, it describe the data set. You need to first run the descriptive statistic, right? So here I have given some examples of the descriptive statistic. Mean, median, mode, standard deviation, maximum, minimum, variance, range. Likewise, you have the chance to analyze your data set through the descriptive statistics. Inferential statistics. Inferential statistics. What do you mean by the inferential statistics? We identify. What is the aim of the inferential statistics? To make the prediction or highlight the possible outcome from the analyzed data obtained from the descriptive statistics. So once we once we completed the descriptive statistic, that data set can be tested for the inferential statistic. Right? So then in research. So then what we are going to do? We are going to make the prediction, highlight the possible outcome. This may be happen. This is the way, this is the result of these changes because of the changes of Y. So this is the result, prediction. Or else this may be happen, possible outcomes. We are going to make prediction. We are going to make the possible outcomes. We are going to highlight the possible outcome from our analysis from the data set. All right. So therefore, they are used to generalize the results and make the prediction between groups and show the relationship existing between multiple variables. We have the chance to analyze the prediction as well as the determine the future possible outcomes, and we have the chance to generalize the results based on our findings. Right. So here given some example for the inferential statistics, regression analysis, ANOVA, the ANCOVA, fact analysis, time series analysis. So those are the some of example for the inferential statistics tools, techniques. Right. Then, how we can identify which inferential statistics suit for my research? What is the inferential statistics which suit for my research? Basically, when you are selecting the inferential statistic which is suitable for your research, you need to identify two things. You need to concern on two things. What those are? The first one, research objective. You have to select the analysis techniques which is reflected or which should be answer for your research objective. It should have the ability. The identified or selected inferential statistic should have the ability to achieve your objective. Your objective is identify the relationship between A and B. If it is so, which identify the relationship, which statistic identify the relationship, the correlation. If you want to identify the impact of the A to B, you have to run the regression analysis. But if you have identified the time series analysis to identify the relationship, that is totally wrong. Therefore, the first thing when you're selecting the inferential statistics, you need to concern on your research objective. Must. Right? What is my research objective? You specify it. Right? The second thing you need to concern the type of variables. Type of variables. Right? What type of variables? How many variable types we have? Yes, we have the two variable types. The first one, continuous variables or else continuous random variables. The other one, discrete random variables. Continuous variable and the discrete variable. Am I going to collect the discrete variables or as the continuous variable? What do you mean by the continuous variable? Can make any real value in at least one interval on the real line. What are the example? Gross national production, GNP, GDP, money supply, interest rate, the price of eggs, price of whatever the thing, householders' income. So those are the sum of example for the continuous random variable. What do you mean by the discrete variable? Discrete variable, it can only take an infinite number of values that can be counted. Number of students in the class. Am I going to collect the discrete random variable or the continuous random variable? So my data are number of students. I'm going to concern on the number of students. So therefore, what kind of a variable that is? That is a discrete variable. Sorry, that is a discrete variable. Are there half students in our class? 0.5 students in our class? No. We don't have 0.5 students in class. It is 1. 1, no, 1, 0. So then number of building in a city. If we are going to identify the number of building in a city, can we identify 0.75 buildings? No. So there may be 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 or 1000 likewise. Number of universities in a country. Are we having, how many universities do we have? How many government universities do we have? We have 17 government universities. Are we having 17.5 government universities? No, just 17. Are we having 19.5? Are we having 17.75 government universities? No, we have the 17. Finite numbers are there. Finite number values are there. So we are calling it as a discrete random variable. Discrete random variable. So therefore, you need to concern on what type of a variable. Is it a continuous random variable? Am I going to collect the continuous random variables or discrete random variable? If it is a continuous random variable, you have the chance. GDP, it may be 2.777 likewise. One is supply. It may be number of 1 trillion, 1 billion likewise. Interest rate, it may be 17.5555 likewise. Price of the eggs, it may be 17.5 or else now it is how much? Egg 45 point or else 45 or else 45 and 50 cents. So there may be some decimals. Just not the just whole numbers. We have some, we can take the real values. Okay. Right. So therefore, you need to identify what type of a variable. Is it a continuous or is it a discrete random variable? Right. Now the type of data. Previously type of variables, now the type of data. We have 4 type of data. We have 4 type of data. The first one is time series data. Time series data, you all have the experience in time series data. I hope it's so because statistical subject, it includes this entire part. Right? Type of data, time series data. What do you mean by the time series data? We collected this data at successive point in the time, often used to observe the trends, pattern or changes over a period. We want to identify the GDP behavior during these 20 years, right? So what kind of a data you need to collect? Time series data. You are at a consecutive point and then you need to observe the patterns. Okay? Can we observe the pattern if we collected the data GDP or as inflation rate during the 2023 to 4? No, we are not. We can't. So therefore, can we identify the 5 years pattern? No. If we are identifying correct pattern, at least you need to collect GDP more than 10 years, more than 15 years. Otherwise, you can't. What kind of a data you need to collect? Time series data. Cross-sectional data. Right? Normally, those who are engaged with the economical data, those who are engaged with the interest rate changes, the gross domestic production changes, national income, and likewise, they need to collect the time series data. If they are collecting the time series data, their analysis is different. They have to go with the time series analysis. They can't go with the other statistic techniques, so they have to go with the time series analysis data techniques. The second one. Second one, cross-sectional data. Previously the time series data, now the cross-sectional data. Cross-sectional, yes, cross-sectional. What do you mean by a cross-sectional data? You collected the data at a single point in the time, right? During this week, during 3 weeks period, single point in a time from the multiple objects, sorry, multiple subjects, lot of individuals from firms, countries, ne, to observe the variation among them. What is our purpose? We need to identify the variation among these individuals. So therefore, you can collect the data at a single time period from the multiple objects. If I want to identify your salaries, I need to analyze your salaries. The salaries of the third year first semester students, their earnings capacity. If I want to identify your earnings capacity, now what I can do? I can collect the data from you. I just share the questionnaire to you. I just share the questionnaire to you. I gave you the scales. Okay, marked it. What is the time period? Single point of the time. And I have collected the data from multiple heads, multiple subjects. There are 56 students. Previously, there were 56 students. I don't know how, but now I can't view it. Okay, there are 51 students. Then I can collect the data from these 51 students to identify their earnings capacity, cross-sectional. Pool data. Third one, pool data. Yes, pool data in the sense combination of cross-sectional plus the time series data. Typically involving the multiple cross-sectional databases collect at the different points in the time. Same, yes, I need to collect the data regarding your earnings capacity in this year and the last year, or as third year. 22, 23, and 24 and 25. How about the earnings capacity? Now you can take it. Cross-sectional data. That means at the point I'm going to take the collect the data from multiple subjects, but during a series of years. Prakash. Prakash, tell me your earnings capacity during these 3 weeks. Sorry, during these 3 years, 2025, 24, and 23 or 22. Roshan. Multiple subject, another subject. So tell me about your earnings capacity from 2024 to 2025. So then we take the other one. I can't remember the name. The person coordinator. Who is the coordinator? The coordinator Vasana anime. Not Vasana. She is Udani. Udani. Udani tell us about your earning capacity during these 4 years or 3 years. 2023, 1 million, 2020, 22, 0.5 million, 2023, 1 million, 24, 1.5 million. Likewise, I am getting the I'm getting the cross-sectional data plus the time series data. I'm collecting the data from the multiple heads during the time period, during the time series. We are calling it as a pool data. If it is a pool data analysis, pool data, you have to go with another technique. Last one, we are calling it as a longitudinal data or micropanel data or panel data. Right, panel data in the sense normally students those who are doing the second data, they need to collect the panel data. Right, what do you mean by a panel data? You collected the data from the same subjects over a multiple time period, allowing the analysis of changes over time with each subject. Right, now what we are going to do, we have to collect the data. Right, we have to collect the data from the same subject during the number of years, and we have now a lot of data sets. We are calling it as a panel data. අවුරුදු 5ක companies 5ක yes අවුරුදු 5යි companies 5යි variables 5ක අපි data collect කරනවා. We are calling it as a panel data නේ. Collect from the same subject over a multi period time, allowing the analysis of the changes over time. We are calling it as a panel data. If it is panel data, you have to go with the panel regression likewise, right? Panel regression likewise. Okay, Puti, right. Okay. Data, right? So you need to identify, as I previously explained you, you need to identify what is your research objective and what is your data variable type. So then if we are going to collect the continuous variables, right? If we are going to collect the data for the data in the form of continuous variables, you have to test the parametric test. If it is a discrete nature, discrete variable, you have to conduct the non-parametric test. Non-parametric test. What are the discrete examples? Number of customers. Now, if you are going to collect the number of customers, not data from the customers, you are going to collect the number of customers. Right? You are going to collect the number of students for your research. That means the data, the variable is discrete. It doesn't have the 0.5. Those are full values. Continuous, if you are going to collect the data from the continuous, if you are going to collect the data as the continuous variable time, you have to run the parametric test. Continuous in the sense it may be 0.55, likewise 0.755, 1.55 continuous nature. If it is a continuous nature, you can test the parametric test. Here we have given lot of parametric test. So next one, once you identify whether you are going to collect continuous or discrete variable, the next one, you have to identify objective. See here. Now we are going to identify an objective, whether it is an identification of difference, right? I'm going to collect the continuous data and I'm going to identify the difference between A and B, difference between X and Y, difference between independent variable 1 and 2. So you have been given the lot of test, statistical test, right? The next one, if you are going to collect the data, continuous data, and then identify the relationship. If you are going to do the continuous data, and if your objective is to identify the relationship, you can test the correlation, multiple correlation, and parallel correlation relationship. The test, right? Then next one, if you are going to collect the continuous data and your research objective is to make the prediction to identify the impact. So to identify the impact. So what you can do, you can run the multiple regression or linear regression. Linear regression in the sense you are going to identify the individual variable and the dependent variable one. If it is a multiple regression, you are going to have the multiple variables, multiple independent variables against the only one dependent variable. Most probably multiple regression and the linear regression are tested in our context, but we have a lot of chances to go this one. These are very interesting and you can go you can come up with this identification of different statistical technique if you are going with the continuous. Right. The next one, if we are going with the non-parametric test, or if you are going to collect the discrete data, full variables, right? So you have to identify what kind of a research objective am I having. So then it is the association, to check the association between A and B, or else to make the predictions, right? Non-parametric test and through the association and the prediction. If it is a association, right? If it is an association, you have to run the two-way chi-square or else the one-way chi-square test, right? So then if you want to make the prediction with the discrete variables, that means full number of variables, you have to test the logistic regression. So therefore, these are very interesting research tests. You have to run the sometime panel data, panel and regression analysis, pool regression, not pool regression, panel data, panel regression analysis, and the multiple regression, linear regression, the logistic regression, chi-square. We have the ANOVA, ANCOVA, one sample t-test, two-way ANOVA. Likewise, you have the chance to do a lot of research techniques. You have the chance to enable a lot of research technique. What is the first one? You need to identify objective, right? Objective with what? The date variable type. Am I going with this objective with the continuous or discrete variable? So therefore, you have to identify your objective and the analysis. I have given some examples here. If your objective is regarding the assessment of the level, degree of level, you can use the sum of the descriptive statistic as the analysis technique, central tendency, dispersion, mean, median. Likewise, if you want to identify the assess, or if you want to identify the assess the level, right? If you want to identify the level of adaptation, you can go to the measurement, you can go to the descriptive statistic, you can take the mean value of the responses, right? So then if you want to identify the difference between groups, different among groups, right? 16. Is there any difference between 16A MOH students and 16A weekend students? Is there a difference? How about their difference? So what are their differences? Are they behaving the same manner, or are they behaving the different manner? What you can do? You can test the t-test. You can run the one-way ANOVA. If it is different only two people, so then you can run the t-test, and then if it is among the group, you can test the one-way ANOVA. Right? So then if you want to identify the relationship, if it is relationship, you need to run the correlation analysis. If it is regarding the regression, if it is regarding the impact, you have to run the regression analysis. You have the chances to identify the linear regression or as multiple regression. If you want to identify the mediate analysis, you have to use the structural equation modeling to the smart PLS. To the SPSS also, you have the statistical techniques to identify the mediation plus moderator. Likewise, Putte, you have to concern what is my objective. ඔයාට තියෙන අරමුණ මොකක්ද කියලා ඉස්සෙල්ලාම තේරුම් ගන්න ඕනේ. ඒ අරමුණ අනුව ඔයාට අදාළ වෙන statistical technique එක එහෙම නැත්නම් analysis technique එක වෙනස් වෙනවා. So therefore you have to concern on sometime if you want to identify the assess the level but you have run the correlation analysis entirely wrong. If you want to identify the difference between one or two individuals, you have run the regression analysis entirely wrong. So those are major errors. Right? In your research, don't make those major errors. You have to inline with this. What is my objective? What is my research question? What is my hypothesis? Accordingly, what is my data analysis technique to identify or else to fulfill my objective? It should be within a one row. All these components should be in line to each other, or else what happen? My objective is to identify the level, but I have identified the correlation analysis to identify the level. Totally wrong with the major errors. We are identifying those as a major errors. Don't make the major errors. Clearly understand. If you are going to do analysis, you need to identify your objective and what kind of a variable you are going to collect. Oh, okay. So then objective and the hypothesis development, right? Objective is very clear to us what you are going to achieve. or else is the objective of a study is a clear and specific statement. So it's regarding the specific, it's specific and it should be clear, and it is the statement that you are going to, that describe your aim of your research, what you are going to achieve, right? Hypothesis, what do you mean by a hypothesis? It's a testable statement. It's a testable statement and which predict the relationship between A and Y, the relationship between two or more variables that we are going to use for our research. In the quantitative analysis techniques, what happened? We have to test the hypothesis. Test the hypothesis. Right. When we are preparing for the data, when we are ready for our analysis, right? So we need to first do the data presentation. Data presentation. We need to first present the data, right? Presentation of data is very important as well as it has the several steps, right? So you have to first identify the missing data. You have to handle the missing data. If there are some missing data, so then the software doesn't identify it, no, normally rejecting your data set to proceed. Therefore, you can't keep the blank data. At least you have to put the average values. Normally, what we are doing is, if there is some missing value, you have to fill it in the average value, average data. Otherwise, don't keep the space in your data set, in your Excel sheet. If it is so, you can't analyze your data set. Okay, there likewise we'll identify the step by step. The first one, handling the missing data, right? The most apparent problem of missing data is that there is simply won't be enough data points to run your analysis. That means, as I previously told you, Buddha, so there might be some blanks in your data set, right? So if it is so, what you can do, you have to cover with the average data set. So sometime if we are taking the self-administrated questionnaire, so there are some of the individuals, some of the customers in a group of individuals, so they are not filling some columns, they are not giving some answers, proper answers for the question. So in that sense, what happened, we have to identify some missing data. But if it is a questionnaire via the Google Form questionnaire, we have the option to make the giving the answers as a compulsory. So then in that sense, we won't getting the missing data. If it is a questionnaire, email question, the Google form questionnaire, but if it is a hard questionnaire, definitely we may have some missing data. What is the technique? You have to identify the average value for the missing values. Right? Data set එකේ තියෙන්න බෑ හිස්තැන්. හිස්තැන් තිබුණොත් එහෙම data set එක recognize කරන්නේ නැහැ software එක. දැන් අපි මේ software එකට දාලා analysis එක කරන හැටි තමයි කතා කරන්න යන්නේ. analysis එක කරන්නේ නැහැ. මම මොනවද කරන්න පුළුවන් කියන එක තමයි ඔයාලට මේ කතා කරන්න යන්නේ. Right, in-depth discussion will be identified through the package-based data analysis. So therefore, you need to do it. That is a must. Those who are doing the dissertation in the 4th year, 2nd semester, so they have to do the package-based data analysis 3-2, right? So then, next one, handling the outliers, right? What do you mean by the outliers? Outliers can influence your results, pulling them the mean away from the median, destroying the entire data set. Outliers, there may be some extreme values. Extreme values. All given us the value 4, 4, 4, or else 1, or else 2, 2 likewise, but there is a number called 10. What happened? It's an outlier, right? Outlier. So then if we include that kind of a data set, what happened? Our analysis maybe include some wrong data. And so then the results may be sometime wrong. So therefore, you have to identify, are there any outliers exist in our data set? So then how you can identify the outlier? There are 2 types of outliers. First one, univariate outliers, and the other one multivariate outliers, right? Univariate outliers, what do you mean by the univariate outliers? Yes, univariate. Any idea? ඉන්නවද? විදිහට දන්නෙත් නෑනේ. Anyway. Okay, Puti. What do you mean by the univariate outliers? It's a extreme data point. It's an extreme data point in the on a one variable, right? Within a one variable, there may be a extreme value, right? So then, what do you mean by a multivariate outlier? Yes, outlier for the model. What happened? It's a combination of unusual scores on the at least two or more variables, right? Every variables it has an outlier. If it is so, what happened? Multivariate, right? Univariate in the sense outlier for an individual variable, right? Outlier for the individual variable, the individual variable ROE. It has the all average values, normally 0.5, 0.7, 0.8 likewise, but the some data point include it as a 5. A outlier for a one variable. And what happened? In the second scenario, not only the ROE, if we are taking ROA, working capital ratio, dividend policy ratio, all of these are having extreme value. All variables are averagely range between 0.5, but every variable include 20, 30, 40, 50 and likewise. There are a lot of outliers in the more than one variable, at least two variables. If it is so, it is called as the multivariate outlier. You have to identify those things also. So there are some statistical techniques to remove these outliers. Next one, Pute. Next, you need to test the normality of your data set. You need to statistically test, right? So whether always your data set should be, so according to the statistical software, some of the software, so they don't need to identify the normal data set. Smart PLs, they are not they don't need us normalized or else normally distributed data set. But some of the statistical softwares, they need to test this normality, SPSS. EView. So they need what kind of a data set? Normally distributed data set. You all know what you mean by the normality. So we can test the identify the cortices and skewness. You can measure the cortices and skewness to identify whether it is a normal distributed or else no. Meanwhile, you have the chance to draw the normality curve through the scatter plots for the normality to test the normality. Right. The next one. Right. Next one. Testing the linearity. What do you mean by the linearity? So these are the sum of assumptions in the regression analysis also. Normality, linearity, homoscedasticity, and the multicollinearity, some of the basic assumption for the regression analysis also. And meanwhile, so those are the data presentation to the data readiness, we are testing these kind of assumptions. Okay, linearity. What do you mean by the linearity? If we are going with the linear regression model, it states that the relationship between independent and dependent variables should be linear. Otherwise, what happens? If there are nonlinear regression analysis, it can't analyze the relationship. Ekko වැඩි වෙන්න ඕන, ekko අඩු වෙන්න ඕන. ඒ යන දිශාවට වෙනස් වෙන්න ඕන. There should be a linear relationship. If it is a nonlinear relationship, we can't run the regression analysis. Now we are moving towards our regression analysis, right? So that means that the changes in one variable result in the proportionate changes in the another. Ensure that how we can test the linearity. The Pearson correlation R is larger than 0.3 of the dV for each independent variable. That means Pearson correlation should be larger than the 0.3. So then it is identified as the variables are linear with the independent variable. Linear with the independent variable. Right. Homoscedasticity, another assumption. Another assumption in the regression analysis. What do you mean by the homoscedasticity? It's a key assumption. A key assumption in the regression analysis. And the other statistical model, particularly in the OLS, ordinary least square regression analysis. What do you mean by the homoscedasticity? The variance of the residuals. We have the errors. The error terms is there. It should be constant across all the level of the independent variables, right? Error term should be constant. Homoscedasticity. When this assumption holds, the error is in the regression model are uniformly distributed, which help to ensure the accurate and reliable statistical data set. For the one variable, error term is another one, the other one is another one. We identify that X, and likewise, if there are a lot of residuals, what happen? It doesn't lead for a reliable statistical data set. So therefore, you need to test the homoscedasticity. Homoscedasticity, another assumption in the regression analysis. Error should be constant across all the level of the independent variables. Okay. The next one, multicollinearity. What do you mean by the multicollinearity? You may have the experience in the multicollinearity. Yes, it occurs when two or more independent variables in the regression model are highly correlated. What happens? We are taking the X and Y and Z. X, Y, Z to measure the changes in the variable A. X, Y, Z. But how many independent variable do we have? X, Y, Z. Three independent variable. Dependent variable is A. Right? But what happened? Multicollineate in the sense the variable X and Y are interrelated. If it is interrelated, what happened? We can't test the clear relationship with the A to X to A and Y to A. Why? Because X and Y are interrelated. What happened? We are identifying it as a multicollinearity. Two or more independent variables in the regression model are highly correlated. What happened, Pute? Here, you can identify UM and the HM. What happened? This UM and HM is interrelated. We can't identify the real impact for the dependent variable, right? Likewise, you have to test the multicollinearity, right? So there are some statistical techniques which can be tested which can use to test the multicollinearity. Right. Okay, now you clear your data set, right? Data through the data presentation. You remove the missing data set, or else you fill the missing data, you identify the outliers and remove it, you have the normality test, you have the linearity, you check the linearity, you check the homoscedasticity, and you check the multicollinearity. Now you have the chance to the regression analysis, right? Regression analysis. What do you mean by a regression analysis? It's the statistical method, right? Statistical method which examine the relationship between two or more variables. Two or more variables, the relationship between two or more variables, the impact of the one variable to the another variable can be identified through the regression analysis. In the regression model, we have the chance to identify the dependent variable and the independent variable. Right. Before moving to the regression analysis, you all need to decide that your regression model. This is called as the regression model. Right. So you all know this. In the statistics subject, dependent variable is Y. How you can determine the model. This is called as a research model. This is your research model. If it is a secondary data, you need to very clearly indicate your research model. What is my model? Here the variable, dependent variable Here, dependent variable is y. Then intercept B0, B0, intercept. If we draw the curve, it's an intercept where it cross the y-axis. So then intercept of y. So then here what it is? It's a slope coefficient. Slope coefficient, population slope coefficient. Okay. This is the independent variable 1. This is the independent variable 1. As I previously mentioned you, this is the error term. But you need to mention the error term also. It is a just notation. Right? So if there are two independent variables, how many slope coefficients are there? Two slope coefficient. The other one is beta 2 and x2. That is the independent variable 2. If there are three independent variables, so what is the formula? Y equals beta 0 intercept plus beta 1 to the power to the x plus beta 2 to the power, to the x2 and then beta 3 to x3 plus error term. And if there are four, there should be four slope coefficient plus the four independent variables, right? You all need, if you are dealing with the second data, this is must. It should be indicated in your research proposal also, the research model, right? Research model. So this is the example for the regression model. Regression model. This is the statistical, this is a example or a statistically derived regression analysis, right? What we can identify here. Okay. So we have the coefficient. What we are going to test? We are going to run this regression model, right? So then regression model give us the answers. Regression model. Now you have the data set, Putta. You formalized it. You have the model. You develop the model. You need to give this model to the software. First, you need to include the data to the research statistical software, and then you need to run this, or else you indicate this model to the software. So then, according to software, they will run their statistical test. ඔයාලා මොකද කරන්න ඕනේ data set එක අරගෙන data set එක clear කරලා data set එක representation කරාට පස්සේ මොකද කරන්නේ software එකට include කරනවා. software එකට include කරපුවාම මේකේ steps ටිකක් තියෙනවා. ඒ steps අනුව අපි දෙන්න ඕනේ මෙයාට model එක, research model එක දෙන්න ඕනේ. මෙන්න මේක තමයි මම බලන්න යන්නේ. ඔයා clearly name කරන්න ඕනේ variable y කවුද, variable x කවුද, variable x2 කවුද, x3 කවුද කියන එක ඔයා model එක දෙනවා research software එකට. එතකොට research software එකට model එක දීලා ඔයා කියනවා හරි. Okay, you run the regression analysis. So then it gives us a generate the regression analysis. So this is the result of the regression analysis. You can identify here coefficient, coefficient, standard error, t is there and p values are there. So then most probably what we required is we need the r square, adjusted r square, right? So then how we can test, how we can run the hypothesis, how we can accept the hypothesis with the p values, and how you can develop your model with the coefficient. See here, Putta, salary. As per this, the output salary is based on, here it indicates the salary. So then salary is the function of constant and the gender. Based on the gender, salary may be changed. Therefore, salary equals, we don't know the constant because of plus and then constant beta 0 plus the gender and this coefficient. Right? So this is the basic formula. We don't have these numbers when we are asking the research software to handle this statistical method. Right? So okay, we give the we input the data set regarding the salary and the gender, and we give the formula, basic formula to the software, which is what is the formula? Salary equals beta 0 plus we don't know beta 1 to the gender. So that is our the independent variable. So then regression analysis output will be generated by the software. Now the regression analysis is like this. So then it gives us the numbers. Okay. Now you can substitute these numbers to your model and interpret your answer. එයා කියනවා හරි ඔයාගේ regression ඔයා model එකක් දුන්නා ඔයාට data set එකක් දුන්නා ඔයාට run කරන්න ඕන data technique එකක් කිව්වා දැන් මෙන්න මගේ results ටික කියලා කියනවා. එතකොට ඔයාට හැකියාවක් තියෙන්න ඕනේ. You should have the ability to substitute these numbers to your regression model. Right? So then salary. Salary equals coefficient. You need to take the coefficient to identify or else develop your research model. We have already model. Now we are going to substitute, right? Constant. Okay, constant here 76,188 and then 88.95. So then plus coefficient for the gender is 21,599.28. So therefore, you can develop the formula, you can develop your research model towards the salary. Salary equal constant beta 0 76,188.95 plus the gender coefficient. How much is it? 21,599.28 to gender. That means if we are explaining this one, so what is this? If we change gender, what happened to the salary? Salary will be changed by 21,599.99 and 28 cents. Right? So then, constant in the sense, unidentified factors to the model reflect this 76,188.95. The most important thing, if we are going to analyze the regression analysis, the other one, we have to accept the hypothesis and reject the hypothesis. Based on this model, you should have the ability to develop the hypothesis. What may be the hypothesis? There is a relationship between gender and the salary. It may be the hypothesis. Regarding the constant, we don't have the hypothesis. We have the hypothesis for our independent variable wise and the dependent variable wise. Here the dependent variable is salary and the independent variable is the gender. So then how you can develop your hypothesis? There is a relationship between gender and the salary. So that is our hypothesis, develop hypothesis. Now, we already determine our research model. Now we can, how we can identify whether we can accept this hypothesis or else not. We are developing the hypothesis after we identified it to the conceptual framework. We do need hypothesis. So then how we can identify whether we can accept or reject this hypothesis based on the p-values. Right? When we are developing the hypothesis, I already explained you in that lesson, the hypothesis p-value, right? Whether we are accepting or rejecting the hypothesis is because of the p-values. You have to identify the p-value. P-values, we have the three values, 99, sorry, the confidence level, we are testing the hypothesis under the three confidence levels. So what those confidence levels? 95% confidence level, 99% confidence level, and the other one 90 confidence level. So then if it is a 90 confidence level, your significant level is 10. If it is not, sorry, if it is 90, your confidence level, if your confidence level is 90, your significant level is 10. If your confidence level is 95, your significant level is 5. If your confidence level is 99, your significant level is 1%. And then එකට එකතු වෙලා තමයි එක කියන එක හැදෙන්නේ. Confidence level එක 95 in the sense significant level is 5%. Normally the regression, you can give these commands to your regression, right? Whether you are going with 5%, whether you are going with 10% or else 1% confident significant levels. Right? This test has been tested with the 95 confident level in the sense what is your significant level, 5% significant level. Now, with that information, how we can identify whether we are going to accept or reject hypothesis? If it is a 5% significant level, your calculated p-value, see here, your calculated p-value should be less than 0.05. If it is so, if you are fulfilling that condition, you can go with the acceptance of the alternative hypothesis. In the example, right, p-value for the gender. What is the independent variable? Gender. Independent variable here, gender. So then independent variable p-value is 0 less than 0.05. It reflects the 0.000. That means we have tested the run. We have run this statistical technique under the 95 confidence level. The other way around, the p-value is, or the confidence level is 5%. So then if the confidence level is 5, so if the significant level is 5%, your p-value should be less than 0.05 or else 5%. According to this given example, p-value is less than 5% or else less than 0.05. That means you can accept the alternative hypothesis. You can predetermine that there is a relationship between gender and the salary. So that is how you can identify whether you accept or reject your hypothesis based on the p-values, which has been tested with the significant and the confidence level. Okay, so now we identify two things: how to write down your model and how you can accept your hypothesis or not. Third one, you need to identify the model fit, right? Model fit can be identified through the R square, right? R square. So then R square as well as the adjusted R square we have to use the adjusted R square. The model as per the example, model indicated that the adjusted R square is 0.1238. That's 0.1238 here. Adjusted R square, what the R square explain? Yes, what is the purpose of the R square? Tell me, what is the purpose of R square? See here, what is the purpose? 12% 38 variation of the salary, that means dependent variable, is explained by the gender, right? So our model is salary. Salary equal the constant beta 0 plus gender, right? So we assume we identified that the salary is changed because of the gender, right? So as per our model, as per our results, just 12.38% variation of salary is explained by the gender. අපි identify කරගත්ත model එකේ විදිහට අපි ඉස්සෙල්ලාම හිතන්නේ මොකද්ද? අපි හිතනවා කියන hypothesize කරනවා salary එක වෙනස් වෙන්නේ gender නිසා කියලා. හැබැයි R square එක බලපුවම model fit එක බලපුවාම it just explain 12% 38 variation of the salary by the gender. That means the changes of salary is explained by not only the gender. So there may be, if we reduce this 12.38 from the 100, 78% changes of the salary, 78% of factors will be explained by the changes of salary. That means unidentified factors to the model explain 78% changes or variation of salary, whereas 12% explain the 12% variation of the salary is explained by the gender. So therefore, our model is, if we taken this model, our model is total failure one. Why? We didn't identify proper variables to the salary. We didn't identify proper independent variables, which are reflecting the changes in salary. So we just identify the gender. So there may be a lot of factors. So that is why this adjusted R square reflecting only 0.12. right? If you minus this if we minus this 12.38 from the 100, definitely 72% factors, 72% variation of the salary is explained by the unidentified factors to the model. That means then the gender. So therefore, if it is to be accepted, if it is middle accepted, so there should be 0, adjusted R square at least should be a 0.5. So normally we are taking 0.3, but if it is a sound model, if it is a good model, at least adjusted R square should be 0.5. Otherwise, we have done this. This information provide us, okay, you didn't completely, or else you didn't do properly your literature review. Why? Through the literature review, you will be able to properly identify the independent variables which are affecting for your dependent variable. Ultimately, if your adjusted R square is 0.12, you are failed in your research. Because why? You didn't complete your literature review properly. That means you didn't identify the proper factors, proper independent factors for your dependent variable. So therefore, you need to concern on the final. You need to concern on your literature review. Do the literature review very correctly. Otherwise, you are ending up with the wrong answers or a strong results. Right. So these are the some of example for your information purpose. You can refer that one also. Here, it's regarding the ROA and the what is the other variable. Financial performance and the board independence characteristics, right? Board characteristics. Here, ETD, educational diversity, gender diversity, ethnic diversity, national diversity, board independence, financial performance, and organizational OB in the sense, yes. Right, board independence, and likewise here you have given some independent variables, right? Independent variables are, we are going to here identify is there any relationship between RO and identified factors here, right? So you have been given the probability, right? So then by looking at the probability, I just highlighted it here. By looking at the probability, you have the chance to identify whether my hypotheses are accepted or not, right? So then by looking at the R square, you have the chance to identify why model is fit or not, right? So the variation of the independent variable is explained by the dependent variable how far, right? How much of variation in the dependent variable is explained by the unidentified factors to the model is explained by the R square. So then coefficient, what is the purpose of coefficient? Coefficients will be help to develop your research model, right? Research model will be developed based on the coefficient. Just I highlighted these the important parts, probability, coefficient, and the adjusted R square and the statistic, right? The example explanation is given to you and the hypothesis testing also given to you, and then you have the given example practice question. You try to answer for this question, and references also there. If you want, you can refer the references, given references, right? Okay, give me a 5 minutes. I will explain you the format of your research proposal. I know it is little bit hard. If it is a practical classroom, I have the chance to explain it. But unfortunately, here I don't have. So we have to bear it. Otherwise, we don't have the option. Okay, I hope you all can see here the proposal format. I uploaded this one to the LMS also. So these are the guidelines for your research proposal. And I uploaded the sample proposal. That's a sample. You can refer that one also, sample proposal. You can get the idea from that one, as well as next week onwards, I'm getting your proposal presentations. You have to ready for that one. The presentation formats also uploaded to the LMS in the last week, right? And I share the message to their coordinators. I just uploaded it and refer it. I hope you are working on that one. So we are working on the research proposal from the third week onwards. I'm supposed to see your progress. Next week onwards, Putta, I ask you the management to ready the physical lectures. Yeah, if it is unable to make the presentation physically, I have to go to the online option. Normally, I'm going to have the physical presentation. Anyway, I ask you, okay, request you to ready for the presentations, right? Ready for the presentation and develop your research proposal. Okay, which is having 40% marks for your research methodology, and definitely you have to understand not for the marks weightage, just this is the proposal which we are based for your research allocation. These days we have allocated the research supervisors for the 15 batch. I'm really happy to say that. So out of the, I hope there are 164 students not yes, 164 students which has been registered, who has been registered for the fourth year second semester. Out of them, only 9 students didn't submit their proposal. Out of that one also, two have already submitted. That means 7 students out of 60, yes, 164 students, 7 didn't submitted the research proposal. I'm really happy about that one. Right? So therefore, without any issues, we allocated them the research supervisors. Right? I hope you also doing the submission of research proposal accordingly, since you are online batch. Right? For the 15 batches, yes, intake 16, you are the second batch in from the intake 16. From the intake 16B also, I have taken their physical presentation. I don't know whether I'm able to take your physical presentation or else online presentation. Anyway, 16B also, they have submitted their proposals in a precise manner, and they all submitted proposals without any barriers. I'm expecting your support also, not support. This should be happen from your end. Otherwise, you don't have the supervisors and you don't have the marks. So therefore, this is the end. We are reaching for the end of the semester. I hope you give the priority for this research supervision or its research proposal, because I'm always emphasizing your research assignment from the second week onwards. මම ඔයාලට second week එකේ ඉඳන් කියලා තියෙන නිසා මම හිතනවා ඔයාලා ප්‍රයෝරිටයිස් කරයි කියලා. ප්‍රයෝරිටයිස් කරේ නැත්තත් පුතා ඔයාලට තමයි ඒක ඉම්පැක්ට් එක හම්බ වෙන්නේ, මට නෙමෙයි. එතකොට රිසර්ච් සුපර්වයිසර් කෙනෙකුත් නැති වෙයි, මාක්ස්ුත් නැති වෙයි. නිසා you need to submit your research proposal. Before submitting your research proposal, you have to do the presentation on your research proposal. This is must. Those who are not doing the presentation, I have the chance, I have the power to not to take their presentations, not to take their proposals. Those who are not doing the presentation, I have the power to not to take their proposal also. Right? Okay, Putta. So this is, give me 3 minutes. I will briefly summarize the proposal format. Right? The thing is, I already given you the copy also. Copy in the sense, given sample is given to you, Putta. Sample with the permission of management. ඔයාලට තේරෙන්නේ නැති හින්දා ඇකඩමික් රයිටින් තියෙනවා. ලියාගන්න නම් එන්න එපා. ඔය මොනවද බුලට් පොයින්ට්ස් දාලා ලියන්න නම් එපා. මම හැමදාම ඔයාලට කියනවා this is academic writing. This is academic writing, so therefore you need to concern on that one. That is why we gave you the sample also. Right? Sample also, which can be taken as a guidance to you. Right? Okay, Putta. Proposal format. It should include the topic first, and then your research topic, dependent, independent, and the research area should be included here. And you have been given the letter formats also, letter types, and then you make the heading research proposal, and then research methodology subject, Must registration name and the name with initials, right? Name with initials. So then you had to write the abstract. What do you mean by the abstract? You need to write down your summary of your proposal. What is your objective? What is the data collection method? What are the research theories that you are taking for your research? And then what is your sample, expected sample, sampling technique? And then that's it. And data analysis technique should be included, right? So that is the brief idea to have your about your research, right? So then the Times New Roman, whatever the format and the letter size also given to you. Please adhere to these guidelines because we are sending your proposal to the outsiders. We need to maintain our quality, right? Okay, so then general guidelines. Just write down 200 words for your abstract and then the keyword. Keywords, what are the keywords? Keyword in the sense always when you are writing your research proposal, you have to highlight some words. හැමතිස්සෙම ගන්න වෙන words ටිකක් තියෙනවා. If it is regarding corporate governance in this research, then yes, corporate social responsibility and the company's financial performance. Always you need to take the corporate social responsibility word. හැමතැනම corporate social responsibility කියනවා. හැමතැනම කියනවා financial performance. So therefore, several times you are taking the social responsibilities, corporate social responsibilities and the firm financial performance. So therefore, you can take those two words as the keywords. Otherwise, you can take the manufacturing companies also. Likewise, you have to identify what are the keywords that I'm always referring in my research. Include at least 5 or 4 keywords here. And this is the content. No, yes, you just need to include the content table, right? Content table. How many sections are there? There are how many sections? So there are 6 sections, right? First one, Pute, you need to write down the introduction regarding your research proposal, right? Under that one, 1.1, you need to write about your background, research problem, research questions, and the objectives. And then significant of the study, what is the theoretical and what is the practical significant, and chapter summary. Every chapter should have the introduction as well as the chapter summary. Right? So these are the sum of chapters. If you are properly doing it, so these are the chapters of your dissertation. If you properly do the research proposal, that means 25% of your dissertation has been completed at the moment. Right? So then you need to the second chapter, section 2, it's the literature review. Literature review. First give the introduction and then theoretical literature review, definition for your independent variable, dependent variable, and the you need to identify the theories, right? Theories which are relevant for your study. 2.3, what it is? Empirical literature review. Empirical literature review, similar researchers to your research. It may be international context and the Sri Lankan context. So then write down the chapter summary. What you have done in this chapter number 2, the literature review. Research methodology, right? Chapter number 3, right? Give the introduction, draw the conceptual framework, write down the hypothesis. Hypothesis need to be in line with the conceptual, should be in line with the objectives and question. And then what is your research philosophy? Your research approach, is it deductive, inductive, research strategy, research choice, unit of analysis, time period, population, sample size. One by one, you don't need to more explain those things. You just take the 2 or 3 lines to explain these given subheadings, and then you write it down in your research. What is your sample? What is your population? Likewise. So then operationalization table according to the lesson number 6, operationalize and the conceptualization. You go to that one. I explain it how to develop the operationalization table and the research methods. That means today we discussed what may be your research software, it should be included, and what may be your data analysis technique, right? So what are the data analysis technique? Am I going to use the regression analysis or whatever the thing? So then chapter summary. And then the chapter number 4, what may be the scope? What are the limitation when you are doing the research? Just write it down as a 1 page or 2 page, that's enough. And then summary and conclusion. What is your summary and conclusion up to now? Not regarding the future research. මෙතනදී ළමයි පටලව ගන්නවා summary and conclusion කියලා. ඔයාගේ research එකේ conclusion එක ලියනවා. කොහෙන් හරි research එකක් අරගෙන ඒකේ තියෙන conclusion එක මෙතන ලියනවා. Not like that. What is the conclusion? What is the summary of chapter number? During this chapter number 3 should be write down here. And then time framework. ඔයා මේ research එක කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ මාස 6ක් නම් මාස 6 තුළ chapters complete කරන්න කොහොමද කියන එකයි time framework for your research. And the references, it should be Harvard format. Don't include 1 or 2 references. This is must. This section is must. At least include 1 page references. Otherwise we feel you don't refer the more literature, you just refer the 1 or 2 research articles. Write down these things, right? So this is the organization of your proposal, right? I have included some sample to your LMS. You refer that one, and then we'll make the deadline as okay. For the moment, we'll keep it as a 9th. 9th February, the deadline for your research proposal. We need to take your research proposal. This is a continuous assignment. I have to send it to the outsiders also and collect the marks. So there is a huge responsibility with your research proposal. Not I'm just evaluating your proposal. The outsiders also evaluating your proposal and giving the marks. So therefore, please adhere to the timeline 9th, right? 9th February, I'm going to collect your data. During these 2 weeks, anyhow, I'm going to take your presentations, Pute. I hope sometime I have to do your presentations via the online during the weeks. I hope you give your maximum support to me. right? මට ඔයාලා 100 ගාණක් කියනවා 100 ගාණකේ group presentation උත් නෙමෙයි එක එක්කෙනා evaluate කරන්න ඕන මම external යවන නිසා මම හිතනවා week days වල ඔයාලා presentations දැම්මොත් එහෙම online presentations දැම්මොත් එහෙම ඔයාලා ඒකට මට contribute කරයි කියලා without any barriers or without any bargaining මම හිතනවා ඔයාලා හොඳයි ළමයි නරක ළමයි නෙමෙයි සැබ් එකේ කොහොමද නරක ළමයි නැහැ එතකොට I hope you will give the fullest support to me, right? So, and I'm expecting full support from the coordinators as well, right? Okay. Any questions? Yes.
Madam, කවද ඉඳන් වගේද තේට presentation කරන්නේ? ඒ කියන්නේ
next week ඉඳන් ගන්නවා. මගේ next Sunday හරි ඔයාලට line එක allocate වෙන දවස් ඉඳලා ගන්නවා. You don't need to come up with the proper formal way, නේ? Formal way endonna you just come as the normal with your attire, so no issues. You just present it what you are going to do. That is must. මම ලිස්ට් එකක් දාන්නේ නැහැ. මං ගාව ලිස්ට් එකක් තියෙනවා. මම රැන්ඩම්ලි තමයි ප්‍රසන්ටේෂන්ස් ගන්න. මට ඕන කෙනාගෙන් තමයි මම ගන්න. ඒතර එයා රෙඩි වෙලා එන්න ඕනේ. එයා හිටියේ නැත්තම් මම මාක්ස් නැති කරනවා. මට මාක්ස් ප්‍රසන්ටේෂන් මාක්ස් ටික මම ප්‍රසන්ටේෂන් වලට පොඩි මාක්ස් එකක් දෙනවා සහ මම ඒක මාක් කරගන්නවා ඔයාලගේ රිසර්ච් ප්‍රොපෝසල් එකට. ඒක ප්‍රොපෝසල් එක ඉවලුවේට් කරන්නේ නැහැ මම ප්‍රසන්ටේෂන් එක කරුවේ නැත්තම්. ප්‍රොපෝසල් එක ඉවලුවේට් කරන්න ඕන නම් තනියම නම් බෑන් ප්‍රසන්ටේෂන් කරන්න අනිවාර්යෙන් ප්‍රසන්ටේෂන් එක කරලා තියෙන්න ඕන පුතා.
excuse me madam.
Yes.
madam අර ගිය සතියේ කලින් සතියේ කිව්වා අපි තෝරගත්ත research topic වලට Google sheet එකක් share කරනවා කියලා ඊට පස්සේ ඒක
මම share කරේ නෑනේ. හරි. මම share කරලා තියන්න. මට මතක් කරන්න coordinator කවුද ඉන්නේ? ඉන්න coordinator කෙනෙක් මම හරි මම note එකක් දාගන්නම්. හරි.
දැන්ට madam අපි presentation එකට දැන්ට අපි literature review එක portfolio activity 5 යටතේ ලියපු එකට මේ රිනුව නම් හරි නේද? presentation
මොකද්ද? ඔව්. ඔයාලා select කරගත්ත portfolio activity number දැන් අපි we have already completed the portfolio 3 and 5 no. We identify the base paper and then I hope you finalize your research topics. Right? So then what we can do is you have to develop your research proposal for the literature review research topic. එතනදිත් මං කියනවා අදටත් ඔයාගේ අද ලෙසන් එක අනුවත් වෙනස්කම් තියෙනවා නම් මොනවා හරි. යා ඩිවලොපින් යෝ. මං ඔයාලට ස්ටික් කරන්නේ කවදාකවත්. එතකොට වෙනස්කම් තියෙනවා නම් ටොපික් එක වෙනස් කරන්න ආයෙ හදන්න. හැබැයි මුල ඉඳලා දැන් ප්‍රොපෝසල් දැන් මේ පෝර්ට්ෆෝලියෝ ඕනේ නෑ පුතා. I have already given you the portfolio. No? So then what you can do is you can directly develop your proposal. Any questions? කියන්න ප්‍රශ්න තියෙනවා? presentation එකක් හදාගෙන එන්න presentation එකේ format එකත් මම දීලා තියෙනවා. ඒ ටිකට ඔයාලා ready වෙලා එන්න. මම අහුවොත් එහෙම ඇයි මේ research එක කරන්නේ problem එක මොකක්ද කියන එක justify කරන්න ඔයාලට පුළුවන් වෙන්න ඕන දැන්.
Excuse me, miss.
Yes.
Miss අපිට අර මේ base paper එකත් එක්ක literature review එකක් මේ upload කරන්න කියලා තිබ්බනේ corrected literature review එක. ඒක miss මේ individually comments මොකුත් දෙන්නේ නැද්ද? නැත්නම්
දෙන්න
අපිට
විදියක්.
ඒක
ඒක present කරන්න පුතේ.
presentation එකට ඒක present කරාම ප්‍රශ්නයක් නැහැනේ.
ඔව් ඒ topic එක දැන් ඔයාලා develop කරපු literature review topic එක තියෙනවානේ. ඒකට හදන්න presentation. දැන් ඔයාලට තේරෙනවානේ මේක research එකක් කරන්න පුළුවන්ද? මේක research එකක් කරන්න බැයිද? මම මොනවද ගන්න ඕන data? මට primary data ගන්න පුළුවන්ද? questionnaires තියෙනවද? measurement scale මොනවද? දැන් syllabus එක මම cover කරලා ඉවරයි. එතකොට දැන් ඔයාලට overall ඔයාලගේ research topic එකකට proposal එකක් ඇදීමේ හැකියාවක් තියෙනවා. දැන් අදාළ topic එකට දැන් literature review එකක් ලිව්වනේ අපි correct කරලා base paper එකක් අරගෙන. දැන් ඔයාලා partly 50% විතර complete ඔයාලා confident ඔයාලගේ research topic එකේ. දැන් බලන්න ඉතුරු ටික complete කරන්න පුළුවන්ද කියලා. complete කරන්න බැරි නම් ආයෙත් හිතනවා නම් මේකට මම literature review එකක් ලිව්වලා data collect කරන්න බැයි නම් එතන ආයෙ වෙනස් කරලා proposal එක හදාන්න. එහෙම
හරි miss, thank
නැත්නම්
you.
ඒක හදාගන්න පුළුවන්. ඒකට data collect කරගෙන යන්න පුළුවන්. මේක issue එකක් නැහැ කියනවනම් literature review ලියපෝ research topic එකකටම proposal එක හදන්න. If the time permits, definitely I will give the comments. This week we don't have any extra work. Okay, if the time permits, I will give you the comments on the literature review. Anyway, we'll see the submissions. I don't have the access, I hope there are 80 or we have the 180, 120 students. මේ මම සාධාරණයක් කරන්නත් එපා. Okay, I will do my best to give you the comments. Any questions?
Excuse me, miss. Last week ආපු කට්ටියගෙන් topics ටිකක් ඔයා බලලා තියෙනවා කියලා ආරංචි වුණා miss. මම last week ආයේ මේ office එකකින්ද දැන් ඒ වගේ වෙලාවට මම ඊයේ මිස්ට මේල් එකක් දෙන්නා මගේ portfolio activity ඔක්කොමයි මේ මගේ base paper එකයි.
Portfolio activities නම් බලන්නේ නැහැ පුතා මම. emails බලන්නෙම නැහැ. ඔයාලා කවුරු හරි emails වලින් portfolio submit කරලා තියෙනවා නම් කරුණාකරලා LMS එකට upload කරන්න. මට portfolio බලන්න විදියක් නැහැ emails through. මට miss වෙනවා.
මේ LMS ට දැන් අද assignment එක submit කරන්න ඕනේ මම මේ වෙලාවට submit කරනවා. එහෙනම්
LMS එකට submit කරන්න portfolio activities නම්. හොඳද? මට WhatsApp මම emails බැලුවේ නැහැ ඊයේත් lectures අදත් lectures ඒ නිසා මම emails බැලුවේ නැහැ මම WhatsApp හැබැයි මට message කරපු හැමෝටම මට පුළුවන් විදිහට මම LMS එයාලට comments දුන්නා හරි මොන හරි කරන්න කියලා මට WhatsApp එකේ message එකක් දාන්න පුතා මම ආයේ හෙට තමයි වැට්ටාපම emails ටික check කරන්න.
හරි miss okay thank you.
හරි. ඉෂුව එකක් නැහැ ඔයාලට ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා මට කෝල් එකක් හරි දෙන්න. Yes, any questions? අහමඩ් අල්තාෆ්ද පුතා ඔයා?
ඔව් මිස්.
හරි. තව කෙනෙක් ඉන්නවා තරු දිව්‍යා. I don't know who is that. අනේ නෑ යන්නේ. හරි. Okay, Ahmed, send the base paper with your research topic පුතයා. Via the WhatsApp, I will test it. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
good. Any other questions? Any clarifications? Okay, hope you don't have any questions. If you have any question, you can directly contact me, or else you can request your batch coordinator, whatever the representative, to contact me. Okay, Buddha, thank you very much for your participation. I'm expecting your full support. So then, thank you very much. Have a great evening.